So, hey, this is Bernie Burns, and I'm sitting down with Mr. Greg Miller.
Hi.
Hey, Greg, how are you doing?
I'm great, Bernie. How are you?
Greg, formerly of IGN, formerly of what before that?
The Columbia Daily Tribune.
Columbia Daily Tribune at the University of Missouri?
No, Columbia, Missouri. This is a real newspaper in the town of Columbia, Missouri.
Oh, really?
So I went from the University of Missouri to the Columbia Daily Tribune.
So you managed to go to school in Columbia, and by the way, we're playing No Man's Sky,
Yeah.
which will be totally in the background.
Of course, it's ridiculous that I have to play it on a PC with an Xbox controller. Seeing as I have like a 13-hour save that I was all excited to show you. I have so much Emerald to show you. I've done so many things. But here we are.
This is the best part of my day is getting Greg Miller to play basically a PS4 exclusive.
Yeah.
On a buggy PC port.
I was gonna say
with an Xbox controller.
That's the other thing too, like how bad the PC has been getting shit on with this game in terms of everything being destroyed.
Dude, this has been an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I actually said on the stream for the No that I'm getting super disappointed in video game developers for teaching my kids to not get hyped about stuff.
Sure.
Because everything my kids have been hyped about.
You can't be excited for.
No, because it comes, like video games especially, they come out and you know they're going to be good in like 6 months.
Right.
You know? But it's like you get excited for the release date, but it's really not the release date. I think Minecraft did that.
Well, Minecraft came out with no expectations, which was nice, right? That's the big thing, is that it came out and everybody was like, what the hell is this game going to be? And then all of a sudden, it turned out to be awesome, but it had like groundswell, whereas like No Man's Sky was very much like crowned ahead of time of like, this is going to be the best game of all time.
And I was one of those people that said that.
I mean, so have you played it at all?
You know what? It's one of those, this is the weirdest respect that I can give to a video game.
Yeah.
Is I know I'm going to like this game so much that I don't have time to get addicted to it right now.
Sure. Okay,
so I'm actively avoiding this game. Ashley and JD, my oldest son, they were playing on. They have PCs right next to mine at home.
Yeah.
And they played till I think 3:30 in the morning. I went to bed and they were up the whole time. Can you imagine having essentially a stepmother who will stay up till like
to play the games with you and stuff?
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
They're like throwing each other tips and everything like that.
Yeah, I've been playing all weekend. I mean, it was one of those. I had that gut check moment of getting on the plane to come to Austin, where I was like, "Do I pack the PS4?" And I was like, "No," because I almost packed the second screen so I could play on the plane. And I was like, "That's a bridge too far. I don't want to be that guy who's like using the Virgin America plugs to get in there to like doing no.
You're the guy that take the photo of because you're in the airport like using the one plug that everybody needs for their cell phone.
Exactly.
And you're the guy just like choking that thing down. So, one of the reasons why I thought it'd be funny to have you play this on PC,
right,
is
because you knew it would crash like this. This doesn't happen on PlayStation 4.
The frame rate of them, by the way, dropped like on the recording software, like just plummeted. But I thought it'd be fun because you are known and you have a reputation as being a PlayStation guy.
Right, I'm famous for PlayStation.
Do you think that's earned? I mean, like that you're, because I think it comes with some things like, oh, you're a fanboy.
Fanboy, you get that too though with the Halo. Oh crap! I forgot.
Undeniably. What's this thing?
This is Sentinel. They don't like you breaking stuff down on the planets. I was being.
Well,
I'm
that's
talking to
Sentinel,
you. I'm
back
chilling
the fuck
out,
up, dude. That's what he's supposed to do. He's been
he
waiting
doesn't-
18 months for this game to come out.
Oh man, way longer than that. You kidding me? How many E3s do we have to see Sean Murray up there talking about this thing?
I know, dude. No Man's Sky was the thing that just kept lingering and lingering, and they would show like the same like high-level conceptual ideas of what the game was going to be. It's like, okay, yeah, we get that.
Well,
we knew that last year.
That was the thing when I finally, like 2 E3s ago, when I got to go behind closed doors, and like Sean sat me down, he's like, so what do you want to know? And I'm like, what the fuck is this game? Like, what the, you go up there at E3 and you talk about it, and everybody gets super excited, but I have no idea what the hell it actually is. And so like that was when things changed for me, when we sat down and we're talking to him about it, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. What it is we're going in, you're exploring, you're uploading. That all makes sense. Now I understand where it is, and that set my expectations, I feel, at a reasonable level. Whereas I think, as the internet's shown you, a lot of people did not have those things set appropriately.
What, you telling me the internet had wild expectations?
They kind of ran away with it. Not that like, if you're just watching the E3 demos and they're talking about all these different things, I can see where you get away from you for sure.
You know what I would love to do? I would love to go and look at all the conjecture as to what the game was going to be and compare it to the same conjecture posts that were made about Spore.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Because I bet they're very, very similar, you know?
Yeah.
Aside from like the size of the universe and everything that you do there. But do you find now that you are able to get as hyped for stuff as you used to?
No, we just did a topic on the Gamescast about this, right? Where it was like, you'd get so worried. Like, the best example for me, right, is like I'm a DC fanboy. and holy shit, have I getting my teeth kicked in recently? You know
It's
what I mean?
a little rough, dude.
The
It's a little
Suicide
rough.
Squad one was the one where I was like, all right, like people were divided on Batman v Superman. I'm sure this is gonna be the one that like this seems like fun. Nobody should have expectations. And then we went there,
Well,
and it
you
was
say
like,
divided, but it was basically two camps. It was people who didn't like the movie,
Yeah.
and then you.
no, there were a lot of people on my side. Again, it's not a great movie, but it's a fun movie. I had fun with Batman v Superman.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it too. My main complaint is I just don't want to see the Batman origin story anymore,
I know,
or the
I
Superman
know.
or the Spider-Man
Or
one.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, and that was the thing of like, I don't know how many people did Zack Snyder show that movie, and nobody was like, hey, him floating up in the bats, really bad first impression.
really bad.
Really bad for him to fly with these bats. And he's like, no, but it's a dream. We're like, no, we get that, but the first reaction is gonna be a laugh and say, holy shit, what does Zack Snyder do? Fucking the Sentinels. Talking to you, not paying attention.
See, the Sentinels are like a metaphor for fans of DC Comics for years. It's like they show up, you're like, look, you're destroying this. You can't have Batman
We have
flying
to
away.
stop you.
We have to tear this down.
Should Batman kill everything? Is that really what we want?
Can I take you with because I know you've talked about Batman vs Superman a lot.
Yeah.
My problem with Batman vs Superman was actually more than anything else was I thought it was interesting. Spoiler, by the way, if you haven't seen the movie. At the end of the movie, Superman dies, and that held such little weight that nobody even talks about that like it's a spoiler. Like
Yeah, I know.
it's not even an event in that movie.
Well, that was the thing.
Superman dies.
That was the thing about it for me, right? Is that when I'm watching the movie and they kill him, I was like, are they really gonna do this? Are they really gonna burn this? What could have been a movie unto itself right here?
The whole Doomsday,
Yeah.
Death of Superman.
And it's
thing.
like, because even when they revealed Doomsday, I never thought they were gonna kill him in the movie. That was not where my head was at. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. And so, burn the shilling shirt.
And then I feel like the little thing with the coffin with the
And that was
rocks-
the thing.
Yeah,
is like, yeah, by the time they do that, you're just like, all right, well, why the hell would I care about this? This clearly doesn't matter. Like, you know, and that was the thing of like, it could have had an impact. And it was actually scaring me because Colin and I argue all the time where Colin's always like, oh, yeah, you know, nobody cares about Superman. He doesn't matter. He's not culturally relevant. And I'm like, no, he is. And blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, there's a great line, right, when from the comics where Batman's talking to Superman. He's like, last time you inspired anybody is when you died. And I was like, if they kill him in this movie and don't bring him back, and that's how they set up the Justice League and everything else, I was like, what a fucking condemnation of this character.
Wow.
That he doesn't matter, that he means nothing to anybody. And so when that didn't happen, but like, it was like, just tease me. Because even then, if we were on the outside right now and looking in, and it was like, he's dead, but they didn't do the dirt, I'd be like, maybe he is really dead. Maybe that is how they're going to inspire everybody and bring the
Why
heroes.
short circuit that?
Yeah,
right?
and instead it's like, okay, no, he's totally alive. Everything's going to be fine. You're like, well, that kind of sucks. Why did you do it that way?
It's like it'd be like at the end of Empire Strikes Back. It's like I just found out Darth Vader's my father, and Yoda's like, "Oh, don't worry, you're about to kill him. Don't even sweat it." You had all disappointed the gas grenade that Green Arrow wasn't part of the whole presentation of hitting Superman with kryptonite.
No, I mean, it was one of those things where I sucked again. Those trailers gave away everything.
Yeah.
Seeing as how I remember, we did all these reacts for Kind of Funny, and every one of them I was like, this is how this is gonna happen. Now it wasn't nearly as bad as Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Where I leaned over in the middle of the movie and I'm like, hey, this movie sucks, Tim, but at least everything I said in our videos is coming true. Like I called this to a T. You know what I mean? Not that it was like hard to figure out that, oh man, Slipknot doesn't seem like he'll be around a long time. This character nobody cares about.
Well, the other thing too is that so many of the superhero movies, going all the way back to the Tim Burton Batmans,
Yeah.
so many of the superhero franchises in the modern era are more so the individual episodes or movies. They're more so about the villains. Like, oh, this one's about the Joker. This one's about the Penguin.
Right.
You know, and so the villains became more important. So Suicide Squad seemed like, I guess why it worked on paper was, people love the villains, so let's just do one that's all about the villains.
Yeah. Well,
You
and
know?
it was also their chance to be Guardians, which I get, which would have been awesome, that they totally screwed up, of course.
Yeah, but I mean, that's one of those things I think that's going to happen. I think it's funny, too, from the context of our relationship, because the first way that we worked with you is you're a guy that I admire a lot for your personality, because you're one of those performers who... It's so funny, you present such a large ego
Yeah.
whenever you perform, and you definitely have that. You have that huge personality, but you're also not shy about putting yourself out there in different ways. Like you're not shy about being a villain yourself.
Oh, I mean, well, that's the best part about, like, I have this, like, fun dual identity, right, where it's, like, the RT audience knows me primarily from the Gauntlet, right, where
Yeah.
I got to be the heel, and it was, like, when we were doing it, I didn't even realize how much I was leaning into it, like, all my professional wrestling background coming back to me of,
Yeah.
like, years of watching
Full
it.
heel.
Where, like, everybody gets it, where, I go to RTX and people boo me, but they don't boo me, like, oh, Let's Play Live, too, like, that was the great one where I came out and, like, they booed me, and we play it up, you know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
we get it and they get it, and it goes back to me of being, like, a wrestling fan, where it's always, You talk to any wrestler, and they're just like, you want a reaction. You don't care if they boo or cheer. That you just want them to know who you are and have something to say about it. And like that's why it works and why I enjoy it so much.
Well, I think it's such a big part of our culture too, whether you call it like, gamer culture or geek culture, whatever you want to call it. It's that there is a certain component of the audience, or I think everybody kind of partakes in it at some point, where they like to not like something as much as they like to like something.
Yeah.
Like the Suicide Squad thing, or Ghostbusters. I saw this post about Ghostbusters where people said Ghostbusters lost $70 million. And there's a lot of issues tied up with this Ghostbusters and people's hate for it. But there was this genuine groundswell of sentiment against it. And there was a post on Reddit saying it lost $70 million and the sequel that was greenlit is now canceled. And the comments were like, good. And I'm like, do you really? Okay, I get you didn't like this movie, but do you really not want them to make another Ghostbusters movie? Is it really? Have you hit some kind of objective here? I mean, it was baffling to me.
It's just, Ghostbusters, what a painful. I mean, like, because that was the whole thing with Ghostbusters, right? Where I had been from the get-go, like, don't do this. Please don't do this. And I mean, like, I'm talking about, like, Ghostbusters 3. Like, when Dan Aykroyd was talking about Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah.
I was like, don't do this. You don't want to make this movie. Don't make this movie.
Did you like Ghostbusters 2?
Yes, but I was a kid. Like, you have to understand, that's 1989, right? Like, that's like that's a distinct memory of being in the theater with my mom. I would have been 6 years old. Right?
Yep.
Being in the theater with my mom. And I remember when the music cued, after Dana saves Oscar the first time, the music cues up and the logo forms. And I remember, like, it's one of those dumb kid things where I was like, I didn't want to smile, like, for some reason. Like, my mom was looking at me. Like, I knew she was, like, wanting, like, oh, he's going to really enjoy this. And I was like, I'm not going to smile at this. And then I couldn't stop smiling. You know what I mean? Like, that was, like, such a awesome moment for me to see the Ghostbusters back, to see them on, the big screen, all these different things that I didn't, have a chance to do when the original Ghostbusters came out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I like Ghostbusters too, but it was funny. I always talk about it where, Honest Trailers just did a great, right before Ghostbusters reboot, they did a great video then they did the Honest Trailer for Ghostbusters 2. And I'm watching that, and then, it starts like, before the reboot comes out that'll ruin, before the sequel comes out that'll ruin the original film forever. Meet the sequel that came out and ruined the original film forever. And they go through how it's point by point the same movie, and I had never ever thought that way. I'm like, holy fucking shit, they're right. This is the exact same movie as Ghostbusters 1.
The movie that ruined your childhood the first time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the line.
Yeah, it's so funny, man. It's when you look at stuff like that, I remember as a kid. See, what was Ghostbusters the first franchise that you can remember watching? Like,
yeah, I mean, Superman, like, I got into comics and superheroes early, and then it was Ghostbusters.
So did you watch, like, the Christopher Reeve Superman movies?
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, and those just get better.
Man. It's a tour de force by the end.
Saves the world from nuclear weapons and everything at the end.
Yeah, oh my god, that's the thing so many people overlook about Superman 4, right? The fact that he shows up at the United Nations and says, I've decided none of you get nuclear weapons anymore. And every country on Earth stands up and cheers. And you're like, wait, what? No, that's not how this would go at all.
It would go exactly like it went Superman versus Batman, where somebody blows up
everybody hates this guy. Why would he do this?
Congress while he's sitting in the middle of it. It's funny because the franchise that I got, I just consider that I got very lucky as a lifelong geek, and it definitely shaped it. I was born in 73, and then Star Wars came out in 77. So I was like 4 or 5 years old when Star Wars, the first one, came out. But by the time Jedi came out, I actually hated Jedi as a movie.
Really?
I thought it was dumb, and I thought it was a kid's movie. I hated the Ewoks.
Sure.
But for years, I was like, there's 2 good Star Wars movies, and there's the last one. And then, Phantom Menace came out. I was like, okay, so
here we go.
Jedi's a pretty good movie.
Man, it took you that long to come around in Jedi?
Yeah, it really did. I mean, because if it's all you have to compare to,
sure, the first 3
are those, then Jedi, in my opinion, was the worst of the 3.
Sure.
And so to me, it was the bad movie. But then, some other movies came out that I didn't like as much, and so it put everything in perspective.
Yeah, you finally had perspective on it.
Same thing with Ghostbusters, man.
Right.
Same thing. It happens.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was the thing where, I don't, look at it now as an adult, you're like, yeah, Ghostbusters 2, not a great movie.
Not a great movie.
But
sincerely, honestly, not a great movie.
But it was fun, and I'm doing Ghostbustery stuff again. You know what I mean? You're like, whatever.
But it was a classic example of a sequel where they took anything that was popular and made it the subject of the next movie. Like, slime was not a huge part of the first movie.
Right, yeah.
It was like this little prop, but then Bill Murray ended up on every T-shirt in America. Like, he slimed me.
Yeah.
And so then slime became a big part.
Of course, Slimer himself being a bigger part.
Yeah. I mean, even like the slime thing, it wasn't called that really in the script. That was ad-libs. It was called ectoplasm.
Yeah.
Anyway, so...
Ghostbusters.
So I'm curious, though. It's like Ghostbusters being your first franchise.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, as a kid, when you got started. When did you discover video games?
Oh. So my video game story starts based around Ghost. Did you know this story?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, based around Ghostbusters. We were going to Toys R Us to buy new real Ghostbuster toys or whatever, or just look down that aisle. And my mom made the mistake of cutting down the video game aisle. And so I was walking with her, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw the Ghostbusters, No Ghost logo, turned, slammed my finger against the screen. I said, "What is that?" My mom went, "That's a video game, and you get to be a Ghostbuster." And I was like, "I want that for my birthday." And I was pointing at the Sega Master System version, and I became a Sega kid on that day.
Jeff Ramsey's also a Sega Master System kid.
It was, and so like for a couple weeks or months, I don't remember anymore, go by, and Mom and Dad bought me the game, and Uncle Mike bought me the Sega Master System, and I was off to the races.
Dude, my favorite game on the Sega Master System was Joe Montana Football.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I love that one. That might have been on Genesis when that started.
I think so, yeah.
I feel like there was a good football game on the Master System.
Probably.
That was a weird one. It had cards, right?
Yep. They had both. They had cartridges and then a card reader slot. Ghost House, which since Ghost was in the title, I made my parents buy me that right away. That was one of the cards you slipped in the front. Yeah.
It's amazing how as a kid you make those mistakes of getting something that seems like it's going to be very similar to something you like.
Oh yeah.
My parents made that mistake because I saw Star Wars in the theater 35 times.
Yeah.
And then my parents were like, "Wow, he seems to like this, Star Wars thing. He likes the science fiction stuff. There's a new sci-fi movie coming out. Let's take him to see it." It was Alien. So they took me when I was like 6 years old to see Alien in the theaters.
How'd that go?
I almost died. I was out of there by the chestburster scene. I made it through the egg scene, but then the chestburster scene, it was like, nope, get out of there.
No, that was I remember my parents took me to, or my mom took me. This is like the first adult movie I remember going to see before Ghostbusters 2. I went and saw Beetlejuice in the theaters because like it was a ghost movie. I had all the Ghostbusters props obviously. My mom made my own jumpsuit because this is before they were selling this stuff like idiots. And my dad used to make a Kleenex box traps. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
All that stuff. And I had a Tobin Spirit Guide that I made myself.
I think Marcus talked about some Ghostbusters stuff that he did too for his early prop making. I guess Ghostbusters was super inspirational in that.
Yeah, it was just like, it was such a fun thing, right? And like, it seemed so, it was another one that was obtainable. It wasn't like superheroes, you know what I mean? Like, it was just, they're garbage men for all intents and purposes, right? Mm-hmm. They just put on their jumpsuits and go out and take care of the trash stuff.
Yeah, and that's the way they treat the ghost busting in the middle of the movie. It's just like,
yeah, exactly.
They're almost like
a
exterminators.
Mundane job, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're just doing their thing. For me, that's why growing up, I read a lot of comics too. Never read any DC, mostly read Marvel.
Sure.
Like an X-Men, Secret Wars. But Iron Man was always the comic I read. I was amazed.
Oh, wow, really?
I was amazed that Iron Man became like the linchpin of the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
I remember when that came out, I was like, they're making an Iron Man movie?
Right.
All right, whatever.
Then
you went and I went and saw it. And you're like, holy crap, this is amazing.
For me, when they cast Robert Downey Jr., I said, okay, well, they're clearly on the right path with Tony Stark at that point.
Yeah.
But they kind of avoided the whole alcoholism thing.
That's my one thing with like when you talk about the Marvel Universe, and we talk about stakes even, is the fact that nothing ever matters. You know what I mean? Like, I thought Iron Man 3 was such an awesome character development for Tony, right? Like, I have PTSD based on Avengers. I'm like, oh, right, yeah, that would be a real thing that would happen. How brilliant they're bringing that in and doing something with it. And then he blows up all suits, and then we never hear about it again.
Yeah.
Age of Ultron, his fears everybody's going to be dead. It's like, all right, but, like, you're not changing. You're not becoming a different person. Not that not that I want you to stop being Tony Stark, but even, like, the Pepper Potts breakup happens off screen. You know what I mean? Like, we're just, what's going on?
Those scenes are so contrived in that stuff where it's like,
we couldn't get Gwyneth Paltrow back, so.
Where's Jane? Thor?
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, she's played by a very famous actress. And she's not available.
She seems to be constantly pregnant, so no, she's doing that.
Yeah, but it's really cool to see these movies, because I'm sure, as a DC fan growing up, you got to at least see like the Tim Burton Batman movies and things. There was no good Marvel movies.
100%.
Forever, dude. Forever. So it seems like Marvel's just completely dominating right now.
100%,
But at the same time, it's like, DC's doing great on TV.
Yeah, and they do great with the animated. And like that's the thing is like, and that's when I knew I was in a spoiled position, right? Of just like sitting around and being like, oh man, like the movies all suck, but it's like, well, I can also sit here and watch an amazing Flash show. And I never in my wildest dreams imagined that that there would be Gotham and Legends of Tomorrow and Supergirl, and they'd be shows that I'm like, you know what, they're not that great, I'm not gonna watch them.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, that was never a concept before, and now here we are. I'm like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. That seems fine. Whatever. There's too many superhero shows, blah, 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 blah.
So talk to me a little bit about this game. I mean, it's like, I don't really know anything about this game at all. Is this a game that you're spending a lot of hours on?
Well, so what happened is it came out, and I was playing it in like 20-minute chunks all week, and that's not the way to play it. You know what I mean? So people were asking me my opinions. I was talking about a podcast, and I didn't really have them, right? Because it's like it's a game you need to play and actually get going and understand the systems and see where it's going to be. So Saturday I sat down and played it for 8 hours straight.
You're destroying a lot of shit here, by the way. You're gonna get those Sentinel things.
Now the Sentinels don't mind this stuff. The blue stuff I think they're fine with.
Oh, rocks
or like
are
these
cool.
these giant things, they understand that I'm mining. It's when I take on the just local plant life. Everybody gets really mad at me.
They're botanists.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want me screwing around with that stuff. But yeah, I like it a lot. It took me a while to get there, I feel, but I'm a big fan now, and it's like I was saying, like it was a struggle not to bring it. What it is like a less fleshed out space Minecraft. Because it is the same loop, right? Of
Dude,
like, I'm going to harvest all this to get a better ship to do this.
And think about it, if they just put this game out in early access. Nobody would have complained, because that's like, when I was talking about Minecraft earlier, starting these games off like this, I was talking about the early access model of, a game comes out, if it's not done, there's going to be some kind of patience for that. Because Minecraft was essentially in alpha
Forever.
for 2-3 years, you know?
Yeah.
Like DayZ is now, or like Kerbal Space Program, like these things just lived in early access forever. And if No Man's Sky, if it had been released in early access when they first started making the announcements, or even the second year they were talking about it,
Yeah.
there would have been a lot more patience for it. But because it's a PS4 game, they can't really do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem they are doing that, right? Like, Paragon is out in early access on PS4. You could buy it and play the beta, all this different stuff.
True.
But you burn so much of your pop. Video games still are marketing, right? And I do feel that, like...
And movies.
Yeah.
Big entertainment products.
And so, Minecraft worked because nobody knew what the hell that game was, and it started building a fan base and build word of mouth. You already had word of mouth with No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
And so you get out there and you get it, and I do think, I mean... Expectations ran away with the game. Both on, and part of it's Sony's fault for sure. Part of it is.
God, the aesthetic looks so much like Destiny to me.
Oh no, totally. The interface and everything
Yeah.
else totally looks like Destiny, 100%. But yeah, they got away from it in a lot of ways, and then when you do that, people build it up in their head as to what it's going to be, and when that happened, I really feel like that screwed a lot of things up for them in terms of how this is going to be.
So I want to talk now about like how you made the transition from being young Sega Master System devotee to being the world's biggest PS4 fanboy.
Sure.
So, or the world's biggest
Thanks for calling me the fanboy.
world's biggest
Vita fanboy, for sure.
But but before that, it's like, can we talk about fanboyism a little bit,
of course.
because everybody definitely has preferences. So when this thing is a PS4 exclusive,
Yeah.
do you feel like more of an obligation, or when you see a DC movie, do you feel more of an obligation to defend those things, or to see the merits in them?
For games, no. Here's the thing about it with the PlayStation fanboy thing and why it irks me a little bit, right? Is what happened is I got hired at IGN on the PlayStation team and then was lucky enough to stick there 8 years.
Uh-huh.
And so what it was that I had a beat. You know what I mean? And so I knew and I know PlayStation inside and out, right? And so I always talk about it being like, if, whatever your favorite sports teams are, like the Bears reporter. He's not a Bears fanboy. He just knows the Bears inside and out, and he's the expert in talking about the Chicago Bears.
People tend to talk about what they know.
Exactly. Like, that was my coverage spot, and that's what my expertise was in and is in. And so that's where it came down to for me, is that it's not a fanboy thing as much as like, no, because I was the guy who, like, when I was on the original Podcast Beyond, I was the guy, like, I'm not going to buy a PS3. It sucks. It costs too much money, and there are no games. And I would say all this stuff, and we would sit there and have these long, drawn-out conversations about it. And, like, I would be like, I'll wait for the first price drop, and I encourage all of our listeners and all this stuff. Uh-huh. But when it goes up that, like, when we sit there and you do your top 25 list or all this stuff, it is that I exist in this ecosystem, so this is what I know. And that's why it nets out that way. I think when Sony put something out, whether, and they were behind No Man's Sky, even though it's on PC, and there's rumors now of Xbox and stuff like that, it was funny of, like, I was like, oh, right, like, it came out and everyone was streaming, and I was like, huh, yeah, I guess maybe we should have, as the PlayStation guys, done a stream for this, but that's just not where our heads were at or what we wanted to do, so we didn't, you know what I mean? We don't feel the need to market Sony shit or anything like that. We, when they do fuck up, we're the ones who call them on it. We know it when we know the pain points. There's a reason that on the show we have, on PS I Love You XOXO, there's a segment called the worst PSN name of the week. It's because you can't change your fucking PSN name, and that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And someone needs to call that out as much as possible. We used to call it the PlayStation blog for they just copy and pasted in what the games were going to be, right? The descriptions of the games,
really?
And they were broken English. And so after us doing that for about 3 months on PS I Love You, they started editing them. You know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden it was markedly better. And, like, that's the thing, is it's not that we're sitting here, trying to suck anybody off, as the internet always yells at me about, but it's like, we're here because we just know it, and that's what it's about. Now, the DC stuff, I'm a total fanboy of, because I don't have to cover that stuff objectively, right? Like, I grew up only reading DC comics, because I shouldn't say that. I grew up reading Spider-Man up until the Clone Saga when I was like fuck you. I cannot do this. You just tore apart Peter and Mary Jane. I can't deal with this. Ben Reilly, no thank you. And so I, went all in on DC, but DC is, something that's born with me. So like, I go into those movies not ready to defend, go into them, I think, ready to like them more than other people, and I have silver linings in them. Because like, Batman v Superman still to this day is the one that I cannot get over, leaving that theater and being like, that was fun. And Tim being like, no, that was bad. I was like, oh my god, did I Superman Returns it? Because Superman Returns was totally like, I tricked myself into thinking I like that movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, totally. It took me, I watched it a bunch of times in theaters.
I tricked myself into thinking I liked the game.
Oh, yeah, with Michael Douglas?
Was Michael Douglas in the game?
Isn't it? Are we thinking about the same one?
Just the Superman Returns game. I know there was an...
I thought you meant the movie, The Game.
Oh, no. I meant the Superman Returns game.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. Like, oh, well, Metropolis has a health bar. That's cool. Whatever. No, the DC stuff, I don't... Like, it's always just an interest thing where it's like, I caught a lot of flack in our Civil War review. Because, like, in Civil War, I'm not a big Captain America fan. And for the same reasons people don't like Superman generally is why I don't like Captain America. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm a huge hypocrite. But it's just like... For me, that movie starts and ends when Spider-Man gets introduced and Ant-Man's there, and then when that ends. When it's like, all right, now we're going to leave the air. I'm like, oh, don't go.
No,
you know what I mean?
Spider-Man's
Please don't
so
go.
good
Yeah,
in
and that's
that
the thing
movie.
is, like, I can't wait for that Spider-Man movie.
It's
but
the
like,
best I've ever seen someone do Spidey.
Yeah. And Doctor Strange doesn't do it for me. I'm not a magic guy, so it's just like, all right. Like,
Looks awful to me.
I'm like, whatever. And like, we'll see.
I don't know. It could be great. I thought Guardians of the Galaxy was going to flop. I thought Suicide Squad was going to flop. And it's not going to flop. It's going to make a lot of money. But it was critically panned. And this Doctor Strange, I don't know how. I don't know.
But it's one of those things too where it's Marvel. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Marvel continues to knock this out of the park. So I guess I enjoy the Marvel movies, but I always talk about it, what was it? I always forget. What's the one before, it was Winter Soldier, right? Where Winter Soldier ends and they show Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver locked up. And my girlfriend at the time was like, lights come up, she's like, that's cool, who are those people? And I'm like, I don't know. We've gotten to the point now where I just don't know anybody, you know what I mean? Like, they're making the Captain Marvel movie, and I'm like, I love Brie Larson. I don't know a goddamn thing about Captain Marvel, so it's like, I'm sure it'll be fun, and it'll be fine, and it'll be a Marvel movie, but will it be one of the Marvel movies that I leave and I'm super, like, best superhero movie of all time, we were talking about this the other day, like, and I know it's a cheat, but I'll never forget Avengers in the theater at midnight. Like, that movie was amazing in the reaction, and it's totally a cheat, though, right? Because it was, all right, you've had 7 individual movies, and we're finally making them pay off or whatever.
Right.
But I remember, everybody cheering, being so into it. When Thanos popped up, the woman in front of me jumped up and threw her arms in the air like she had just fucking seen the Holy Ghost or something. And then,
Well, yeah, for years, we've had to suffer like Marvel, at least when there were DC movies out, there were Green Lantern, it was Superman, it was Batman. The Marvel movies up until the recent era were stuff like Tank Girl and Blade.
Right,
it's like, who the fuck are these people?
Yeah.
It's like, nobody's reading those comics.
Right. Yeah, so it's like, Avengers, I remember getting to the street and I could not stop smiling. Because it was just such a good movie. And I had that experience, I don't think, since Spider-Man 2. I remember seeing Spider-Man 2 in theaters and walking out and calling my then girlfriend and being like, this movie was everything I wanted it to be. And it ended with Mary Jane and him being together and happy, and I love that, and da-da-da-da. And she's like, go get him, Tiger. And I was like, oh my god, it's perfect.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing to see. I felt that way. I felt I had that moment when they made the good X-Men movie. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It was really cool just to see the X-Men. It was like, it hit on every note, except maybe the Dark Phoenix stuff. But anyway, I became a fan of Marvel just because all my friends, they read it growing up and they told me to read it as well. Right. And there was a miniseries called Secret Wars, which I think really expanded me from beyond Iron Man, to the other ones. But like, you're going from Sega to playing PlayStation. What was your first moment with PlayStation that locked you in? Was it a Ghost game?
No, it was Metal Gear Solid.
Was it Fatal Frame?
I did play and enjoy Fatal Frame.
Gus loves that game. It might be his favorite franchise of all time. So is that a new animal?
Yeah, we're scanning. We're gonna add him here to the.
Hold still, little pup.
There we go.
Oh, the Japono.
Oh, got a whole bunch of guys over here.
Fight. Oh man, I can already tell I'm gonna love this game. I love exploration stuff. So it was Metal Gear Solid. That was the game that locked you in.
Because what had been happening is I had been playing on N64 forever. Well, no, so it was Sega forever, right? And so it was Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, Game Gear, Sega Saturn. And the Sega Saturn was, I put on my Christmas list in N64. And my mom was like, oh, you sure you want N64? You've always been a Sega kid. They just put out that Sega Saturn. And I was like, all right, fine, you're right, Sega Saturn. Because I had been back and forth, and then I was like, oh, no.
The mom with the... But she made you legit. Like, she made you, like,
I was
underground.
for sure a Sega fan, right?
Oh, I get to name this?
Yeah.
I like Gus Sucks with no K.
Yeah, you like that? That's
Yeah.
how we get. Well, that way they wouldn't come for us. They wouldn't know what's going on.
So where are you going right now?
I'm stopping off. I'm just dicking around right now.
Oh, you're going to this facility that you
Yeah, there's a facility here. I was gonna make a bypass chip to go look for inventory slots.
Okay.
Because it's all about inventory in this game. So let's see. I'm short some stuff. What am I short for my thing here? I gotta get some plutonium.
So then, okay, so you grew up. You started playing PlayStation. How old were you when you started playing PlayStation with your buddy?
I picked that up in high school.
Okay.
So and I must have been able to drive. So 16, 17.
And this is living in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and we recently had a Let's Play Live event in Chicago.
We did. It was awesome to go home. I can't, when you guys hit me up and you're like, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to be at the Chicago Theater, I was like, this is not where I expected video games to take me.
We had so many discussions about, like, what are we going to do to, like, you know, this is Greg Miller's kind of homecoming to Chicago, you know what I mean, for a live show. It's like, what can we do to help promote that? It's really cool. My mother spent a lot of her life in Chicago. She's not from Chicago. She's from Gary, Indiana.
Oh yeah,
but,
I know Gary.
Yeah, but she spent a lot of her life in Chicago, so it's always a town I associate with my mom, and I've always known a lot about Chicago as a result. So it's really cool that we got to do an event there.
100%, yeah.
But then you went from Chicago, you went to the University of Missouri.
Correct, yeah. So my story goes that in the 4th grade, I had this issue of Game Pro, and on the cover was Death and Return of Superman, and on the inside was Maximum Carnage. And I read it cover to cover for a month, sitting there every night when I come home from school. And finally, after a month of reading it, it dawned on me adults got paid to write the words in there.
Can you get your hand? Yeah, I'm afraid of bumping the table. I can't hear it. I don't have headphones on. So
Don't get in my way.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Don't do this to
Professional
me. Professional
broadcaster Greg Miller. I didn't mean to give you notes.
I'll tell you how to cast. All right. Yeah. So I had been reading it for a month. Figured out adults got paid to write it, and I was like, huh. And I walked into the kitchen with the magazine. I'm like, Mom, I figured out what I want to do with my life.
No kidding.
And she goes, what? I'm like, I want to write about video games.
So you went to college with the goal of working in games journalism.
100%. Yeah. The dream was, not the dream, I should say, but the idea was always going to be that I was going to go to the University of Missouri, which was, is the best journalism school in the country. And I was going to get this degree and be able to write my own ticket. And I was going to move back to Chicago, the suburbs of, because that's where EGM was.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, this is a perfect thing. This is exactly how it's supposed to be. And I'll go there and I'll hang out with them and I'll just do this. And they'll be so impressed when I show up with my degree in magazine journalism that I'll just walk in and get the job, no problem. And so, yeah. He's scanning me. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He wasn't here. He didn't see it with his own eyes, so he won't do nothing.
And it's such an interesting era that Sentinel's coming after you. It's such an interesting era of video game journalism because that's when we would all wait to get magazines. I mean, that was the number one way that we would consume it.
Right.
In fact, the early days of Red vs. Blue, one of the most influential things that happened to us was one of our videos was put on a CD that was mounted to the cover of Computer Gaming Monthly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It's like that. Then the era of there's a CD attached to your magazine. Those are two like totally antiquated things now.
No, but that was the thing is like, yeah, you look back to then, it's hard, I know, for kids listening to understand, but like you didn't know how to do any of this. Like there weren't all these articles. There was no online, so there were no articles of like, oh, you want to be a video game journalist? Here's how you do it. So I remember writing. It took me forever, and I was using antiquated search engines, right? But I figured out a way, and I got Shu's email at EGM.
The editor-in-chief of EGM.
And so I hit him up, and I was like, hey, like, what do I need to do? What should I go to school for? And he's like, journalism. If you're crazy, Japanese would help. And I was like, great, man, thanks.
Wow, that's really cool that he wrote you back.
Oh yeah, totally. And so I that was the path, and that was the plan, and like. While I was at Mizzou, there was an EGM that came out and picked it up, and it was, it was a letter from the editor of Shu being like, all right, we're moving to San Francisco. Like, that's where the industry is. That's where we got to go. And I was like, oh, cool. And I remember reading it and going, oh, I'm going to live in San Francisco one day. And flipping the page and reading about video games. So, like, It was like that, because the job was going to take me all these different places that I wanted to go. And so, graduate with the degree in magazine journalism from Mizzou. And nobody would touch me with a 10-foot pole.
Really?
Like, you know what I mean? I thought, I was like, oh, I want to do this. I'm going to go here. Everybody's going to want me. It'll be so easy. And like, no, EGM didn't respond to anything. IGN, GameSpot, and everybody. Nobody was giving you any response. And the thing is that I had one callback with Inquest Gamer. It was Wizard Magazine's spin-off gaming website or magazine that was just about board gaming and tabletop gaming at the time. And they were just getting into video games. And they needed an editor there. And so it was my only call that would for my dream job or whatever. And I remember Inquest Gamer, yeah.
Inquest Gamer, okay.
And it was I called in, and it was literally, there's been 2 times in my life, and this is the first one where I couldn't stop talking, and I knew I needed to, but I couldn't do it. Because it was like literally like, hey Greg, how are you? I'm like, I'm great. And then he's like, what do you think of this? And it was like, da da da. And like 15 minutes of me being like, I'll tell you why. I'm playing Knights of the Old Republic 2 right now, and it's really good. And I don't think they're doing as well as Bioware did, but they're doing pretty good. And like at the end, they're just like, all right, we'll talk to you later.
Oh no.
Like, no. And so I went to work at the Tribune. And I remember getting there, and I always talk about it, because the thing was, not the problem, I guess. The good thing was that I'd gotten the job at the Tribune way early. So I knew that after college I had a job to go for. So it wasn't like I needed to scrounge or was I worried or anything like that. I just knew that I had this job waiting for me. So with that time, what I did is, I took and shot for the moon, and I was only applying for video game jobs. And I was, the Tribune was there for me. I was going to work at a newspaper, general assignment reporter. It'd all be gravy. I had somewhere to go.
There's a lesson to be learned here too.
Sure.
Because a big part of game time is how people get started.
Yeah.
And like you going in and doing that interview and like gushing and all that, there's a point at which that's important, and then there's like a big fall off at when you go too far with that.
Right.
And like when people come and they apply for internships at Rooster Teeth, and I know them, I the one piece of advice I give them is like, hey, don't go in the interview and talk about how you're a fan all day. Because the last thing that anybody wants to do is work with someone who's just there to like, they're amazed to be there. You know what I mean?
Sure. It's so cool to be in this building with you guys.
Right. Yeah. Exactly right. It's like I've had people that do internship interviews. I go, how'd it go? It's like, yeah, it didn't go well. It's like, did you sit there and talk about how much you love the Achievement Hunter guys? It's like, yeah, that was a big part of it. It's like, yeah, that's
they don't want that.
Here's my tip. Walk in and go, yeah, whatever. Yeah. What do you guys do here? That'll work. Just
video games, huh? Cool.
That sounds neat. You think those will last?
I guess there might be a future there.
So it didn't go well for you.
Right, and so, but I already had the job at the Tribune sewn up. So I always talk about it like I went, the first day I get to the Trib, I get out of my car and I shut my door and start walking to the building, and I was so depressed.
Really?
Because I felt like I had failed, number one, that I didn't go from journalism school straight into video game journalism.
Isn't that crazy, though, looking back across your career, how long it takes to build things? You've been doing this for how many years now?
Oh, I mean, I've been in the industry, like, since I started at IGN, it'll be 10 years in the spring.
So with a decade, of experience behind you now,
it's
like, when you're younger and you have those one or two opportunities, you put so much weight into them. Like,
yeah, totally.
This one interview, it's like you're so depressed walking from your car, and it's like you probably learned over time, I've learned over time, that these things, they build slowly. And you can look back and see the key moments where things took place, but not every individual opportunity is a make or break situation.
Exactly. But it was that I shut the door and I was depressed, and I walked in, and as soon as I got to my desk and got my first assignment, everything was great. I was like, this is I forgot that I like telling stories. I've just been, able to sit around for however many months and not have to worry. But like, here I am. I totally love being a reporter. I love talking to people. I love doing this different thing. So the story goes that I worked there a year, and finally a year in, I convinced them to give me a video game column and blog. You gonna start some shit?
Bring it on.
What did you see? You didn't see nothing? What, I hit a crystal? Get the fuck out of here. So I convinced them to give me a video game column and blog, right? And after I did that for 6 months, and for me it was the switch moment, right, where they gave it to me and it was totally like a whatever. The column's weekly and the blog is as much as you want to do, but who cares? Like, no, you know what I mean? Nobody's reading our online space. And
I love it. Such an amazing thing for a newspaper to say.
Well, that was the thing. Like, one of I guess I was there 6 months. I was doing it for 6 months, and one of the final, in December, this guy, our guy Andy, did a roundup of like what had the best web traffic. And one of my blog posts on there was beating out all of our other stories. Awesome. And they were like, "That's weird. We didn't see that coming," because it was like Kotaku had picked it up and Joystick were talking about it and these things.
Yep.
And so,
and those blogs when they pick stuff up, that's where a ton of traffic.
Sure,
comes from.
100%.
Yeah.
And so, it was great, and I was doing it, and so I did it for 6 months. But for me, it was that they threw the switch, and they still thought of me as general assignment reporter. He works the weekend shifts. He's gonna go do this. It'll keep him happy. But for me, it was very much a pivot point of like, this is what I do now. Nobody else knows it, but this is my job, and I'm gonna blog every day. I'm gonna do local stories, take national gaming news, make it about our community, the blog, the column, all da. So I did all that, and I was talking about it where, oh, I'm out of fuel. I was like, wait, what was it?
Is that what this game's about? Just gathering resources?
100%.
Somewhere else and gather resources?
Yep, 100%. It's just a gameplay loop of like, you go do this. Like right now, like, I'm running over right now, right? Hold on, yeah, I'm hitting R trigger. Fucking PC gaming. Oh, it's frozen.
Uh-oh, is it really? Oh.
Yeah, let me get out of this shit.
Momentarily frozen.
Hold on. PC gaming, what a joke. You should be using this thing for Excel and TurboTax.
How dare you?
I'm holding R trigger. Okay, let's look at what's going on here with the thrusters.
You're out of stuff.
No, I'm not. Look at that. I'm fully stocked, 98%.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that too, because it's like I I get accused of being an Xbox fanboy because of my background of working with Halo.
Yeah.
And it's like there was such a long period of time, and not just on a, like an audience level, but on a business level, where people are like, well, we don't want to work with you guys because you're the Halo guys. It's like we don't, you're locked up with Halo. It's like we do lots of different stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? And but I have to admit that when I choose to play something, I tend to choose to play on Xbox.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, that you have that history of being on something, and I thought Xbox did a great job of the achievement system where I feel like all my record keeping is on that platform
100%,
now.
100%.
So even now, when the Xbox is clearly having an off generation, and they're not doing well, I'm still doing most of my stuff on Xbox.
No, I mean, that's what Colin and I always talk about, right? And we don't hide the fact that we're comfortable in the PlayStation ecosystem. It's just that we have a lineage and history there, and I have trophies, and I have all these friends, and you know what I mean? Like, there is a thing there that I do, and we still cover it. That's still our primary coverage beat, and that's why it works for us.
Yeah, it's so weird because it doesn't take away. I don't think our ability to talk about the other platforms.
No.
Like, one of my favorite games of all time is a PlayStation exclusive. It's Last of Us.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
one of the best games I've ever played in my life. And I'm looking forward to playing this, and I just downloaded Until Dawn.
Oh, dude, Until Dawn's so much fun.
But I freely admit that for the first, you're gonna die.
No.
My first experiences with with a PlayStation, like my PlayStation 3, it was basically a platform that I would spend 2 hours doing system updates every time a new Naughty Dog game came out.
Yeah, and that's the big thing about it. When you don't, I have that same thing with my Xbox or my Wii U or any of the systems I don't actively use all that much, right? You hop on there and it's like, there's all this crap to do, and you're like, whoa, this sucks. And I was like, well,
you don't use it every day.
Yeah, it's like when people used to say how hard it was to navigate the PS3's cross media bar, and I could walk you through to my sleep and turn on your printer settings. What the fuck is going on? What is going on? Why can't this ship take off?
What is going on?
I don't know. There's something bugged up because I definitely I've put in my thrusters.
What if you die?
There's a respawn. That might actually help with the ship thing.
Do we have to reboot?
No.
So, was it the right trigger? Was it always working?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we definitely flew here.
We can go into your keyboard to do it. Actually, I've been surprised. I've heard how lousy this game is, and it's been great as far as I can see.
Oh yeah, well I mean, it's again expectations. Does scouring the planet for resources and inventory slots and flying through space and naming shit sound like fun to you? Like, if so, then you're gonna have a great time. But if you're somebody who wanted to have it be a little more Destiny or a little more, I'm gonna see other people or this kind of crap, I understand.
Can you kill all the Sentinels, or are you just gonna be fighting these things forever?
No. If you can kill them, they will eventually send me some badass Sentinels that'll fuck my life up.
But I'm saying the PC port doesn't seem all that.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the frame rate issues I wasn't having on PlayStation 4.
No,
not because I don't have the draw distance or something else. But I'm gonna save again and see if I can get the ship to take off.
Okay. We'll try it. If not, we go to the keyboard options and switch that up. So, you're writing for the Columbia
Daily Tribune. It's my thing. I do it for 6 months, so I work there a year and a half. And
popular blog.
Very popular. Come on now. And the story goes that IGN contacts me for an interview, right? And the story.
So, how does that work? They contact you? They reach out to you?
No, I had applied. And so what I'm driving at is that the email I started after college, because they took it away, right, on my college email, I applied to IGN 13 times. And that's not including GameSpot, it's not including Kotaku, Joystick, whoever, and it's not including what I would have applied for on my Mizzou account as well, right? Like, I've definitely applied more than 13 times. But on this 13th attempt, IGN contacts me, sets up an interview. So they contact me, interview me, and hire me within 24 hours.
Really?
Yeah. So literally overnight, all of my dreams came true.
Was there some event at IGN that preceded that, like some major talent left or something like that?
No. This is still when they did teams. This is still when it was all written. Like GameScoop was, I think.
No video.
No, God, no. GameScoop was only 15 or 20 episodes in when this conversation and hiring would have happened.
And is GameScoop their first video?
That's their first podcast.
Okay,
that's
gotcha.
IGN's first podcast. I guess there's IGN AFK, but that was a little bit different. So yeah, it's strictly I get hired on the PlayStation team because Juan Castro left the PlayStation team to go into PR, and so this is before now when I was joking around when I was leaving IGN, right? Like, it was totally they'd fly people in from across the country or world, and it would be a day of SWAT team interviews and all these things, and it would be like a month-long process of seeing if this person's going to fit in and work here.
And just in case anybody in the world doesn't know,
sure,
let's really quickly explain what IGN is. So
IGN, the number one PlayStation or the number one video game website.
It is the gold standard, basically, of games journalism. A lot of people like to poke fun at it.
Sure, it's the biggest.
The old Chinese proverb goes, "The tall trees catch all the wind."
Yeah.
But I mean, this is of everything that like started in the 90s, there's few websites that were able to transition to the modern era of, you know, online content. And, you know, for video game sites, this is one of the only ones. It's like Games Radar. You know, the only thing that's left is basically IGN and GameSpot from a few years later.
Sure.
But,
Yeah.
and it was started by Per Schneider.
Yeah. Well, there was. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like what Per Tal. And I don't know. Is Per? I think technically he's a founder. Doug Perry. It was this whole thing of like they had it. There was originally a bunch of little websites like Dreamcast and N64 and all these things, and
There's
then
a Dolphin website that Fran
was Fran was doing Dolphin. That was a competitor, and that's how he got his job. Is Matt Casmassina, another founder, got him.
Gotcha.
But it was they all found it. They all came together under the Imagine Games network.
And Dolphin was the code name for the GameCube before it came out.
Exactly, because they're huge dorks. So yeah, they all did it and got it started and got it going.
So fast forward many years, they hire a young guy from Missouri who's got a popular blog, very popular blog.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome. And they hire you. They do it in 24 hours. And do you just quit your job?
Oh yeah.
And you just
that was the fun thing about it, where it was like, you know, this is what I'd always wanted. And at the time, I am living in Missouri. I have a job. I'm engaged. We're getting married in 9 months at the time. I guess 10 months maybe. And in that interview, we went through it all, and they called me, and offered me the job. And and I'll never forget it. Like, so like, all right, cool. Like, how quick could you be out here? And I was like, oh man, I don't know.
So
like,
you were engaged to someone you dated in college, then, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I got this fiance. I've got this. We have a lease for another. We have a lease with a friend we're with for another, 6 months. And I was like, you know what? 2 weeks. I can be there in 2 weeks. I'll be there in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? And they're like, all right, great. And like, my fiance was totally behind it. And so we got into this very complicated, me moving across the country, nearly dying. I got caught in a blizzard. I was trying to drive. I was very dumb. And
really, where was the blizzard?
Nebraska.
Wow.
I could have either gone south and worried about tornadoes, and being a Midwesterner, I hate tornadoes, or I could have gone north and worried about the tip, just this little tip of a snowstorm that was going to be going through Nebraska. And then you jump to me being trapped in a trailer with a stranger for 8 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you keep in contact with the person?
No, I don't. Earl was very good to me, but I don't need to keep in contact with Earl. He definitely saved my life, man. It was a crazy.
You've had a full progression of your story.
Yeah, exactly.
It's complete. The Earl saga.
Oh, the Earl saga. Never forget.
This little part looks fucking badass.
Yeah, you can come up here mining. There's gonna be eventually space stations to pop up. I think what it wants me to do. It wants me to Starship scan.
So you almost get killed in the blizzard.
Yeah.
Driving out to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Your fiance going with you, I assume?
No.
Oh,
that was
no.
the thing. She stayed behind.
Okay.
She stayed behind because we were gonna get married in Missouri, and so it was like she still had a job and all this other stuff. So she was gonna chill out and continue to live there in Missouri while I was gone and while I was out there trying to make this hacket in San Francisco. And so we did that for 9 months.
Long distance is tough.
Yeah. Well, it's also tough, like when you're broke. That was, you know what I mean? That was the thing of like, well, and now I'm not rich now, but I have money, so it's like, and not to mention I have frequent flyer points out the butt. You know what I mean? So it's like it's so easy to get around and do different things.
We even have video conferencing now. You didn't really have that.
Exactly.
Back then.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So it was a different world, different thing. But yeah, we did that, and then got married, and then we moved out after she moved out after that. That lasted about 1.5 years. Yeah. And then I just kept working at IGN.
So you guys got divorced shortly thereafter? Yeah. So you guys were married for about 1.5 years. That's a pretty, I don't know what the right word is, understandable, evolution to that relationship, I think.
Sure.
You're coming out of college, you both have ideas, you both move across the country, and it's like, and then you're establishing and building a career. I don't know what she was up to.
That was the big thing, you know what I mean? Like, we did the textbook middle of the country move.
It is hard to move to another city for somebody else.
Exactly, and it was like we had done everything. Like we were on this path, and we loved each other, obviously. And it was like this is how this works. This is how all of our friends work, and this is how relationships in the Midwest work. And then when you throw in the wrench of, all right, cool, now we're ripping everything apart, every system, all the families, and moving out there. It was that thing that we got out here, or San Francisco, and you could see how much this meant to me, and that this is what I was meant to do. And she didn't have that.
A little imbalance.
And so when she found something she wanted to do, it became pretty clear. I always talk about it like the next time I get married, right, is going to be, that person's above everything else, right?
Uh-huh.
And this was definitely, we loved each other and we thought that's all you really needed, right? But in reality, there was the fact that we still had our own goals and things we wanted out of life.
And I've been through a divorce myself, and it's always a hard, terrible thing, and it's a very final thing. But at the same time, it's like, what is way worse is in a situation like that, if she spends her whole life giving up opportunities,
living for me,
living for you, and then she looks back in a few years, you're kind of doomed at that point, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
If she does that, so you guys got divorced.
Yeah.
How did that affect your work? Did that affect you personally? I mean,
oh yeah, I mean, it affects you personally, right? Like, I mean, it didn't destroy me or anything. It affected my work. I have this article up that people still reference over at IGN about Playing Through the Pain, where I was reviewing Infamous 1 on PlayStation 3.
Oh wow.
And like how like this is all happening while that's happening. It's like how much I poured myself into that game and how much that game means to me and how much some of the themes and characters and all that connect with me on that level. I don't think it skewed my opinion of it. It definitely made me love it maybe a bit more. But it's also a original IP based. That's a comic book, so I was gonna love it no matter what.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was that, and I think it gave me perspective, right, of the fact that we were way too young to get married. You know what I mean? I would have been engaged at 22.
Wow.
23, right?
Wow.
And then married at 24.
That's like when you talk about like getting engaged at that age now to people in this generation, it's almost like talking to people about like having 8 kids.
Yeah,
it just seems like something from the 30s.
And that was the big thing of I didn't get it when I went to San Francisco and I would tell the people I was working with, they're like, what? Yeah. How old are you and you're getting married? Like, what are you talking about? I was like, what do you mean? That's what everybody does back in the Midwest.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not what happens here. Not that there's anything different. It's just a different lifestyle. And maybe also just being ahead of the curve in terms of technology and everything else.
Well, it's like we at Rooster Teeth, it's like we have like second and third generations now.
Yeah.
But like the first generations, we all had kids by the time we were like, hitting 30 or early 30s.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, there's no even talk about like this. Even the second generation of kids, like most of them are kids, of talent here. Most of them aren't even married,
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like a couple of them are, but it's like the idea that they would be starting families. It's really changed very rapidly.
And that's the thing of like being in San Francisco still to this day. I was talking about it's Neverland, right? Like everyone there is I'm 33, right? And they're all younger than me or at that same age, and we all go out and we drink and we party and we hang out and have fun, or if you want to. And then it's like if you branch off and get married and have kids, you move out to the burbs. But it's like you talk to my friends in Chicago.
You can't afford to have a family in San Francisco.
You talk to my friends in Chicago and like their first children are turning 10.
Yeah.
And it's like my other friends from Missouri just came out to visit and they're like, oh, it's our 10-year anniversary. That's why we're here. It's like, holy shit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you forget that like this isn't life for everybody.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. So I noticed the draw distance is really going kind of wacky.
Oh, you like that? Yeah. PC gaming.
Well, I think it's just.
And for everybody watching, I know I could have stayed up in the atmosphere and done it, differently and come in faster. But we're just talking, all right?
The whole purpose of game time is to have the subject be distracted by the game. That's the whole purpose.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
So a lot of times when people are like, "Oh, they should have done this," it's like, "Yeah, no, it's more about the conversation than it's about that."
We're having a great conversation.
We're having an okay conversation.
I'm not gonna get ahead of myself here.
So you get divorced, and and this is how long were you at IGN total?
Before I left,
we have a lot of ground to cover.
Oh yeah, I was at IGN 8 years, what I always say.
8 years, and you got divorced about a year and a half in.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was another big thing that happened in your career or your life, that affected your career, which is you had a health crisis.
Oh yeah, I caught cancer.
You caught cancer.
I had that cancer happen.
Yeah, and that was a very public thing for you. And I wonder how much of the Rooster Teeth audience, or your audience now, is aware that you went through a cancer battle.
Man, I don't know. It's because I think of it as I always talk about it because I'm a huge nerd, right? And the fact that like I always feel like I always reference my life and my universe as a comic book life and universe.
Uh-huh.
So like I was always like things happen in my life, right? The marriage versus the cancer. And for me, it's always like when that's over with, it's like my universe got rebooted. You know what I mean? Like like how DC just did it again with Rebirth. We're like, all right, this isn't working, so screw that. Everybody likes the wiener dog. We'll keep the wiener dog, but lose the wife. All right, we're gonna give him cancer for a while, like when Superman had electric powers, but that won't stick around too long, and then it'll just be back to the status quo, and everybody will be fine with it.
So, where in relation to you getting divorced, and how old were you? When did you first find out you had cancer?
2012, because I just celebrated 4 years of announcing it. So it would have been 2012, yeah.
So this is post-marriage.
Oh, yeah. This is post-marriage. I'm dating a new girl. And it just happened. It was one of those things where, it was getting ready for the convention season. You know what I mean? Like E3's coming up. We had Judges Week.
That's like a Super Bowl for IGN.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And there was going to be then Comic-Con and this and PAX, and then one of my friends was getting married. And so when we were getting ready for Judges Week, which is when they send all the people who will vote on like what is the overall E3 game of the show, not for IGN but for E3 as a general, they send them all down to LA usually to go see all these games so they can have all these things and not have to worry about missing them at E3, and you can play them and get your opinions down on paper and have private time with them. We're getting ready for that, And I remember feeling a lump on my neck. My lymph nodes were swollen up, the glands behind
Like
your
when you say
ears.
swollen, we've all kind of had.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. It was swollen. I'm like, oh, I'm about to get sick. I thought I'm gonna get sick on Judges Week. What a pain in the ass. I don't have time for this.
Right.
And it's happening again.
It won't let you go.
Well, maybe I don't have. Do I have? No. We just saved and got out of it. PC gaming. I'll get out. I'll just run around and collect stuff.
There you go.
So, yeah, it was swollen up. I'm like, I'm gonna get sick during Judges Week. That sucks. Never happens. And throughout the next, these conventions, I'm not home. Like, I'm on one of them stretches right now, right, where it's like you're home for 3 days at a time. Like, and it's you do your laundry and you eat some food, but you don't go to the grocery store. And so I was like, whatever. I kept feeling them that they were swollen, feeling that they're swollen. Like, that's really odd. I shouldn't be getting sick if they're gonna be swollen like this and they're hard too. I'm like, I'll look into it.
How long a period are we talking here?
This would have been May, and I didn't I didn't announce till August, so the end of July.
Wow.
But it's like end of May, so
but
it's
you're
not
aware of it the whole time.
so, exactly. But in that passing, like, that's weird. And then one day it was that I felt my collarbone, and there was like a growth coming up over from behind my collarbone. And I was like, that's not normal. That's not how that should be. And this is leading up to the end of all the conventions, and the finish line is my friend's wedding.
Are you a guy where health stuff scares you?
Yeah, I've done that before, where it's like you feel something, like, oh my god, I gotta go to the doctor. It's got to be cancer. It's got to be this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Having a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly. I'm worried about that. And so I'm like, And so we get to the wedding. It's my girlfriend at the time, my ex-girlfriend. It's her first time in Chicago. So we go downtown and we go up in the Hancock Building, and we're looking out over the cityscape, getting the tour from Ross Geller, and I noticed that I'm getting like vertigo, like I'm getting dizzy.
Really?
And I'm like, that's not normal for me. I don't usually, at heights don't give me that usually. I've been on tall buildings before. That's not a thing. I'm like, I'll keep an eye on it. Back down, we go Michigan Avenue. She goes into a fancy purse shop. She used to get so mad at me because I'd always say Coach. It's not Coach because Coach isn't a fancy purse, I guess. But there's maybe
fancy, it's like $300.
I don't know. I'm just saying it was a fancy purse shop that she had a gift certificate to.
Fair play.
We go in there. She's walking around looking. I'm looking on my phone, and she's like, I'm gonna go look at those over there. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna go sit down for a second. I sit down. I Google what are heart attack symptoms, because the walls were pulsating in. Like, I could see them bulging in. I'm like, that's not good. That's not good at all. And so I Google. See, I think it's because I'm stuck in this thing, maybe.
Oh, you got yourself clipped in the.
Because I shot away some stuff too, but before the last time too. Anyways, let's see if we can take off 3, 2, 1. There we go. All right, we broke away. A little shooting there. Yeah. So pulsating walls, symptoms. That's not a heart attack symptom. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna drink this water. I'm gonna take deep breaths, and I'm not gonna be the guy who calls a fucking ambulance on Michigan Avenue. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do that when I'm in town for this wedding. Jump ahead to the wedding. We're having a few. We're all sitting there, and one of my friends, who's the guy with the son who's 10 years old already, and a million other kids, he's a doctor. And so I explained to him what's going on, and where he's drunk. He's like, all right, let me stand up. Let me give you an examination. He's he's like, yeah, you need to get these checked out, da-da-da. And one of our friends from the bridal party, his girlfriend, who I just met, walks by, and she's drunk. And she goes, oh, that's just Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's the one you want. And walked away.
Really?
Yeah, she's not a nurse. She just, like, had experience with it, and what my symptoms and everything else sounded like that. And so I got back, went to the doctor immediately. And if you're a foreign listener here, Bernie's podcast, you might not know that the American health system sucks and moves incredibly slowly at a snail's pace. It's a huge pain in the ass. And so I go in there and I sit down with this doctor, and he's like, so what's going on? And it's one of those funny things, because I'll never forget it, but it's one of the things I forget. I had two concerns. Number two was the lymph nodes and all this stuff. But number one was something trivial, but that was what I led with. I was like, oh yeah, this is all happening. And there's like this, and he's like, all right, cool. And so he looks at whatever the initial, I think it might have been maybe like a patch of skin or something, I don't even remember. And then he's like, all right, let's see these lymph nodes. And he makes me stand up, and he does the thing where he reaches out and he touches me, and he touches it, and his eyes go wide.
Oh no.
And I'm like, uh-oh. And then he goes really frantically down. He feels the collarbone one. He's like, all right, explain to me a little bit more about what's been happening and how we know. I'm like, all right.
Is he a little too collected at this point?
Oh yeah. He walks over and he comes back with a ruler, and he's doing the ruler thing on me and up here. And he's like, all right, cool. And he's like, they're a bit disconcerting. Give me 1 second. He leaves, and he comes back, and he's like, yes, they're a bit disconcerting. You need to go get a CAT scan for us to really see what's happening under there. I'm concerned. I'm not ready to make any diagnosis, da-da-da-da. And while he's saying all this, his nurse walks in. And again, you know how slow the system is. The nurse walks in and hands me a Post-it. And she goes, you have a CAT scan in 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh no.
You know that's bad news.
There's no way this should happen this fast. This is a bad sign. So I go and get the CAT scan. And the guy's like, all right, cool, we're going to put you in the tube. This will be 5 minutes. Don't worry, no big deal. We're only going to go to, just below or middle of your sternum. And he puts me in there, goes in, and it stops. And I'm still in the tube.
That was the medical machine, by the way.
Sounds like a cop machine. We do this, and I'm like, all right, cool. And I'm sitting in there, and sitting in the thing, and 5 minutes comes and goes. There hasn't been a noise in a while. Finally, he comes over the little radio intercom, and he's like, hey, sorry, we want to go a little bit deeper, you know what I mean? Just go a little bit lower, not past mid-sternum, but to do that, we need to get the write-off of your doctor. So we've called into him. We're waiting on a response to his page. I'm like, all right, cool, no big deal. Like 10 minutes goes by. He's like, hey, still can't get a hold of your doctor, so we've called the resident on staff, or whoever it is, the person on staff, or I don't know what the hell they call it. The person here who could approve this. We're waiting on that. And then he finally comes back another 10 minutes later. He's like, couldn't get a hold of any of them. Don't worry about it, though. We're just going to take you out. You've been in there long enough, whatever. So I get out, and I immediately call the doctor friend again. I'm like, hey, so when they do this, they can see it, right? They see a preview of it at least, right? And he's like, you do. I'm like, all right. And he's like, yeah, they saw something. So, like, the scan clearly showed something was happening inside me, but it was going way deeper than where the scan left off.
Wow.
And so they wanted to go deeper and see what the hell was really happening. And so then it's the whole thing of, like, all right, cool, like, now this happened on a Friday or whatever. So there's that weekend of like, the doctor will talk to you on Monday or Tuesday about it. And so, again, with where we are now with technology, of course, I get the medical report delivered to me like Saturday morning, not from the doctor, but from the scanners.
Sure.
And it's all like, yeah, seeing this, seeing that. It must have been Monday morning because I was reading on IGN. It's not, can't say it's cancer, but it's cancer kind of thing. They're using the big words or whatever. And that's when I looked up, like all signs point to Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I had to look up what Hodgkin's lymphoma was and all this other stuff and try to figure out what exactly was happening.
Were you sharing this with anybody at this point?
The girlfriend at the time, roommate Colin or stuff, I had told him because it was happening while we were at work and all this different stuff, and not to mention we lived together. And then it was, but I didn't want to go off half-cocked. I didn't want to come tell people that I was having all these things happen to me, and then it's not this, it's not, I don't want to scare people for no reason.
Sure.
And so, eventually, yeah, I talked to the doctor on Tuesday or whatever that I have cancer, that it's Hodgkin's lymphoma stage 2. This is what the chemo plan's going to be. This is how it's going to work out. I'm like, all right, great. I'm totally gung-ho. Let's get in and we'll start it right away. And then that night I went home and called everybody. And that was like the real moment for everybody of like, because I was stupid. The story I always goes, Bernie, that I was really dumb about it, right? Of like, when I was at the Tribune, I had followed this boy named Tim Grant around. I had heard about Tim Grant when I was in journalism school, because the Tribune had done this huge profile on him because he was this young boy. He was dealing with neuroblastoma, and they did this whole thing of like this experimental procedure he needed to do to get better, and da-da-da, and he did, and it was like huge community success story of this,
wow,
this
really?
little boy. Yeah, at the time he must have been 4 or 5, probably. During the story, he probably went from 4 to 5. And because then when I knew him, he was going 6 to 7, I do believe.
Do you think covering that made you more comfortable with it to where you didn't?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. So that was when I was in school. That article was happening of him and his fight and his conquering of his cancer and how great everything was.
Gotcha.
Hip hip hooray! And then when I get to the Tribune a few months in, Tim's cancer's back, and they asked me to go cover it again as the follow-up to do another one of these things of like, here's what's happening with him. This we all followed, and here's what's going on. And so I end up covering the last 6 months of his life. And it's because he doesn't beat it, and he has neuroblastoma again, and it comes back more crazier and more, intense, and all these different things. And I have to go through this, and follow him and do all these different things. But the problem was that and I always talk about this, and it's a weird reference, I think, but now everything's so different, right? Back then, there was my life support's offline. I've been talking too much.
Oh,
Get me out! Don't kill me while I'm looking at the monolith. All right, good. This is why you do this. Keep everybody on their toes while they play these games.
that's right. It's funny you ran out of life support while you're having a health crisis.
Right, exactly. I know,
True
right?
story.
Yeah. So, this was before 50-50, the movie. This was before, I think, there was so much documentation, at least for me, in the world online of cancer. And maybe it's just me being naive and young, 22.
Why are you looking up
whatever
cancer
I
when
was.
you're that
Exactly.
age? Yeah.
So I didn't understand what chemo was. And so when I cover Tim, there's this stretch where I go to one of his chemo sessions out in St. Louis, which is a 2-hour drive from Columbia, but he had to go there to the Children's Hospital. And we get there, and I always talk about this where for a long time I think I don't want kids. I'm not into kids or whatever. But Tim would be the kid I'd want if I had a kid.
Yeah.
He wears Superman shirts. He plays with a 3DS. He's got Spider-Man decals on his wall and all this different stuff. And I get there, and Tim gets hooked up to his chemo through the port in his chest. Or his stomach, actually. He sits there. He plays his 3DS. He plays with his toys. At one point in this 4 or 5 hour procedure, there we go. I just gotta hold it forever, I guess, on the PC. He's like, I don't feel good, Mom. He's like, oh, does your tummy ache? And he's like, yeah, my tummy aches. And it was like, oh, I was like, all right, cool. And he laid down for a second, and then eventually he was back up, being cute, having fun. And I was like, man, he's, the chemo isn't that bad. You know what I mean? Like, there's out and this, that, and the other, but he's doing it fine. So you jump ahead to me getting sick. That's what I'm like, that's what life's gonna be. That's what
my tummy might hurt.
I distinctly remember being excited to an extent of like, I'm gonna get to play PlayStation Vita or whatever, or email or watch movies because I'm a workaholic. I'm gonna get to do this for the 3 or 4 hours a chemo session takes and not feel guilty about it. I'm gonna get to sit there and not have to feel like I answer any emails and do all this stuff. So for my personal journey of it, right, like it's when I get the printout or the medical paperwork and it says, probably Hodgkin's lymphoma, and you look it up, I teared up for a second and then it passed. Because it was like, I looked it up and it's like, 88 survival rate for my age bracket, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no big deal. I got this. That's not a big deal, blah, blah. And so I'm so young and dumb and naive about it that, like, I get the diagnosis, and I'm like, all right. Like, I remember thinking, like, this sucks, of course, but it's a cool story. I'm going to have a story. You know what I mean? My life's experiences, I'm going to have this experience.
Well, you're thinking like a young, invincible person.
Exactly.
And you have cancer.
Oh, totally. And so, like, I shit you not, man, Tuesday night when it's diagnosed, and I'm going to post on Wednesday and tell my office and tell the world. I call my family and friends, like, super close, your core. And, mom and dad are the first calls. Mom, I start the call and I'm like, first off, she's like, what's wrong? I don't call. I'm a texter, or it's like we're going to talk at this day. So, like, she knows something's up already. I'm like, the first thing I say, I'm like, when she says, I'm like, listen, I have something to tell you. You can't freak out. And I immediately go, you know what? I'm sorry. That's not the right thing to say. You're allowed to freak out. You can do whatever you want with this. I have cancer. She starts crying. I run her through all the thing of like, I'm like, no, but it's like, it's a curable one, and this, that, and the other, and it's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it, blah, blah. Get through that phone call my dad. My dad is blue collar, heavy equipment operator, crane operator, spent his entire life in Chicago building skyscrapers, right? And he's just like, not emotionally cut off, but he's not the most emotional person.
Sure.
So like this one I expect to be the easy call.
Comes with the territory.
And so I'm like, blah, 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 and I'm like, so I have bad news, I have cancer, and there's just like silence. And I'm like, and I start immediately to do the backpedaling of like, but it's one of the most curable and 86%, blah, 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 like, he's fine. And then I start calling my friends. And I'm such a dick, Bernie, I called them all. Everybody's like, why are you calling? You like, we don't talk on the phone ever. Like, well, you text me everything. Like, why? And I'm like, and I literally, to everyone who said that, I'm like, I want you to guess.
Really?
Why do you think I'm calling?
Really?
And it's like, you're getting married again. No. You're having a kid. No. You have a disease? I'm like, yes! Nailed it! And like, yeah, I have cancer. And so, but it was like, I was trying to have fun with it, right? Like, well, this is my thing. This is my life. I don't know. I gotta do this.
No, it's weird. It's weird you say that. Like, I want to come back to it in a second, but you talked about having this idea that it's part of your story.
Right.
It's kind of a weird thing based on what we do for a living, and I think everyone who, on some level performs.
Yeah.
Is there's kind of like a thing where you think that about, like, things that you probably shouldn't think that about.
Sure.
I've caught myself doing that too, of like thinking about it in terms of like a story or how it's going to be presented versus.
This is gonna be a great podcast thing. Even when you're getting mad at something, you're like, oh, this will pay off when I can make something out of it.
Oh yeah, like when I get in horrible customer service situations, not in any way relatable to a cancer scare.
No, it totally is. Don't worry.
Yeah, but it's like, when you have a horrible thing that happens to you, even like an accident of some kind, you're like, oh, I'll get to talk about this on the podcast. It's a really weird way to think about the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. So you called your friends and you
I do that. The next day, I go to IGN and we call an all hands meeting and I tell everybody there and people start breaking down in tears there, crying. And I was like, that's weird. And then I put up the post and like this blog post I put up that then goes super viral or whatever. But I mean, it's because it's weird for an IGN article to go viral. But you know what I mean? Where it's like my dumb blog, but like Kotaku was putting it up and it was this huge outpouring of support because we're better about it now. But this is still when the walls are falling down where it's like, you don't hate GameSpot and you don't hate Kotaku, you know what I mean? Like, you have friends who work there, but, like, maybe I necessarily didn't or didn't think people actually cared about me or gave a shit about me necessarily. But everybody's, like, super supportive. And, like, it's immediately, like, I think if it's not that week, it's the next week or whatever, where it's my first Friday chemo session. And I go in there, and I've got the Vita, and, you know, my ex-girlfriend Christine's there, and we go in there, and we sit down, and they're running, like, you know, it's going to be a 4-hour procedure, and it's going to be these 4 chemo drugs, and they come in and give you this banana bag of saline to get you going, like, this is, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, great, no problem. And, like, just bopping around, talking or whatever, and, like, the nurse brings in this bell, and she's like, if you need anything, food or water or whatever, you just ring this bell, we'll come in, and we'll talk to you, we'll give you whatever. I'm like, great, no big deal. They come in, like, all right, hey, like, here's the banana bag, we're gonna do this, what's the bell? We gotta test you with this one drug. Like, she's like, for some, like, whatever it is, 1 in 300,000 people or whatever is allergic to this chemo drug. We're gonna test you for it. I'm like, okay. And they just take a syringe and put it in my arm and stick me, and I go, ow. I go, did that hurt? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, huh, we'll keep an eye on it, but it's probably just a needle. I'm like, no big deal. And she leaves, and we're just sitting around, we're all talking, I'm sitting there waiting for this all to go, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there, and Christine's telling me a story over on my right. And I'm like, and then out of the blue, the entire left side of my body goes dead.
Whoa.
Just dead. There's no feeling in it. And being a wrestling fan, I think I'm having Bell's palsy like JR.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I bring up my left arm, and it's just a wet noodle, and I slam it down on the bell. And Christine stops her story, and she goes, what's wrong? And I go, the entire left side of my, and like, you can't, it's not a video, but like, my lips weren't moving, my face was dead.
Like you're having a stroke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, the entire left side of my body's dead. And the nurse runs in, she's like, what's going on? Because she can hear the voices getting agitated in the bell. I'm like, the entire left side of my face is dead. She runs out and gets to go get the doctor, and Christine's like, keep talking to me, tell me what's happening. I'm like, the entire left side of my body is dead, and your mouth is tinfoil. And she goes, my mouth is what? I'm like, your mouth is tinfoil. And the doctors come running in, and he's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, entire left side of my body's dead. All of your mouths are tinfoil, and it's getting worse. And what had happened is everybody had a triangle of shimmery tinfoil over their mouths, and then it started expanding. And so while they're talking to me, the doctor's like, you're having an allergic reaction to the bleomycin we just gave you. You're one of the 300,000 people who's allergic to it or whatever. What had happened is the entire room goes crinkly tinfoil except eyes. I can only see everyone's eyes. The rest is shimmering tinfoil.
Is that a normal reaction?
I mean, as soon as I started running through what was happening, he's like, you're having an allergic reaction. This is what's happening.
So they knew it.
They knew. Nobody. He wasn't panicking. The nurse weren't panicking.
Okay.
They were like, this is what it is, and they're, you know, we've got to wait it out now. At which point I'm like, take it out of me, take it out of me. I'm screaming out the saline. They're like, the saline is what's helping you right now. That's flushing your system. It was the thing we put under your arm. And I was like, oh, you know. So it's just like, then you just have to sit there and wait. And it was like an extra hour and a half.
An hour and a half.
Of like slowly getting my vision back.
Did you just go to sleep or anything?
No,
Or were you scared, probably?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're jacked up on adrenaline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing. I was not tired at all in any of this. So that happens. And so, like, okay, cool. The vision comes back. The doc comes back in at one point with one of the other chemo drugs, and he comes in, and it's just a normal syringe they put into my arm or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. Then he comes back in another, and he's got, like, fucking riot gear on. He's got the shield on his face and the fucking heavy gloves and this giant blue thing, and he's got this syringe of neon red. And I'm like, hey. And he's like, hey, don't panic. This one just, if it gets on your skin or your clothes, it eats them. And I was like, oh, okay.
So we're gonna
inject this into your veins now. Like, oh, okay. And it turns out this is the one, too, that makes your piss neon Kool-Aid colors, too.
Really?
Yeah. So he gives me that one, then they give me the other one, the other two. And, like, this thing was supposed to be, 4 hours. It's like a 6.5 hour procedure or whatever. And so, like, again, the naivete of it, right, where I was like, I'm going to play video games. I'm going to hang out. Like, Christina just started her job at PlayStation at the time. And she was like, oh, I'm going to come do every chemo session with you. I'm like, no, you just started a job. You can't. She's like, no. I was like, I'll ride the bus. I'll ride the bus to chemo. You don't need. She's like, you're not riding a bus
even
to
like
chemotherapy.
Martyrdom in a weird way.
Well, I was just like, I was so underselling what I was getting into. Where I'm like, I don't need anybody. It doesn't matter. I can do this all on my own. Don't sweat it. Da, 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 da. And so, then there's this stark reality of it when the first session is over, of being back in the car, and we're just both silent. We're both shell-shocked of what's just happened. You know what I mean? And I feel like garbage, of course. And so we get to the house and pull up, and she's like, all right, I'm going to go to the grocery store. Because another thing, like, I think we were both like, after chemo, I'll go to the store with you, and we'll buy groceries. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't expect it to put me on my ass the way it did. And so she's like, I'll go to the grocery store, you just go lay down. I'm like, all right, great. So I go into the room, I shut the door behind me, and there's the bedroom, there's this little hallway, and there's my bathroom. And I turn into the hallway there between the bedroom and the bathroom, and that's when I break down. That's when I lose it, because I finally, number one, holy shit, did I undersell this? Number two, I had no idea how brave Tim was, what he was going through. You know what I mean? I'm just this dumb idiot being a moron out here, like, reporting on him and not understanding at all what's happening in his life. And I then took that as my experience, that it was gonna be so easy. And then that was the thing of like, I finally understood how fucked up the next 9 months were gonna be for me.
And was it 9 months?
It was 6. I beat it in 6. But it was like it's like, I think it's a month and a half in where they're doing it to me. I've already lost my hair. And I break down in tears, and Christine's like, what? And this is at the chemo session. And I'm like, she's like, what? And I'm like, this isn't fun anymore. And she's like, when was this ever fun?
Yeah.
And it was the first time where I was like, I thought I was going to have a story, and I thought I was going to play video games. And instead it's, I come in here once every week on a Friday, and I, sit here, and you get headaches, and you can't play games. I can't focus on anything. I can't read emails. The lights hurt. Like, it was like that. Every chemo was different, where it was like, I'd start wearing sunglasses all the time because all lights hurt my eyes. And then it was like, the saline started making me sick to my stomach, to the point of like, we had
saline.
Yeah, the saline they give you, the banana bag in the
yeah.
beginning. That when they give it to you, I've never noticed it before, and maybe it just came over time, but the sense of it for sure. Whenever they would do that to me, it would kick in my mouth, and it would flood my mouth with that taste. And so like, it got to the point where I started bringing Jolly Ranchers to it, and like, oh, we're gonna give me a saline, put it in my mouth, so I didn't have to taste the saline, even though you still would.
Yeah.
And then it was like, it was always, and the problem was, it was never normal. There was never a chemo session where you're like, this is like A, this is gonna be like this next time, right? Because the next time it wasn't the allergic reaction or this, that, and the other. I'm like, oh, it'll get better, it'll get easier, it'll get, never was. They gave them to me out of order or whatever. This happens. The one that broke me, but also then like showed like, whatever you want to call it, the divine influence of the universe or God's hand in my life or whatever you want to call it, right? Was that I woke up one Friday, it was a chemo day. I've been doing it a while. It's probably October, November, or whatever. I forget now. I could look it up really easily. But I wake up and I see a tweet in my Twitter feed at me, and it's one of my, it's a guy I don't know who works at the Tribune, and he says, hey Greg, I just need to hey Greg, whatever. Hey Greg, this isn't the best place to do it, but I needed to tell you Irene died. And Irene was the Tribune's humor columnist. She'd worked there forever. We were thick as thieves. She was like the cool grandma, you know what I mean, who cursed and drank and went out and ate wings with me, and was this one of those lives that was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And she dies, and it was unexpected. We had talked a week before through email. She was a Hodgkin's lymphoma survivor herself and all this different stuff. And so I'm just fucking devastated, and I call the Tribune freaking out and talk to this kid. And then it's like, I hang up the phone and I tell Christine, I'm going to this funeral. And she's like, the fuck you are? Like, you know what I mean? You need somebody who's gonna calm you down. Like, you are not going to this funeral. You do not get to go do that. You have chemo today. The doctors have told you cannot break this cycle. You cannot fuck this up like this. And I'm like, and I start crying. I'm like, it's like, you're right, whatever. Because that's the other thing, emotional roller coaster. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a live wire of like,
can't even
imagine. I can be totally fine one second. I can be seething mad. You'll never know it. And you can say one thing and I will fucking flip out. I will break down in tears. You know what I mean? Like,
are you talking about this during the cancer treatment, or is that you in general?
Cancer treatment.
Okay.
I'm an emotional I'm an emotional guy, period. Since cancer, it's way worse. But it's because it just ratcheted me up. Not like internally, like
emotions are closer to the surface.
Exactly, on a chemical level. But during cancer, it's whatever. You're a dick and you're this and whatever.
You have a little bit less control.
And I agree. Okay, fine. Like, you're right. Like, I can't go whatever. So we go to the chemo session, and they get there and they start poking in my hand to do it. Can't get the vein. Go over to the other hand, do it. Can't go on my arms. And finally, they're just like, all right, we can't do this. And so it's like, well, what? They're like, you need to get a port. In the beginning, they had asked me, do you want? Which is, if you're not familiar, it's a thing. Basically, it's a direct line to your heart. So you'd get a little box or a sponge, think of it, underneath your skin on my chest that they can plug into every time and not have to go to the veins. And then there's a direct line to your heart for the drugs. When they said this initially, they're like, do you want a port? And I was like, do I need a port? And they're like, not necessarily. It'll be easier than that, but you're only doing it for 9 months. You'll be fine. You don't need it. I'm like, don't worry about it. And then like 3 months in, you need a port. I'm like, fucker, why didn't you tell me to get the port immediately? You know what I mean? That's the kind of feedback I wanted. But they couldn't do it, and the port surgery wouldn't be till the next week.
Okay.
So I got to book a ticket and go to the funeral and be part of that. You know what I mean? Which meant a lot to me.
Was that tough while you were going through cancer treatment?
Oh, sure, of course. Yeah, of course. And that was the thing too, is I show up and like, first off, I haven't seen most of the Tribune staff in roughly 5 years, you know what I mean? And so I show up and like, not only am I bald now, I'm bloated, like I'm not, and like, it was like that moment where everybody had to take that moment, like, holy shit, Greg, you know what I mean? Like, It was this crazy of getting there and doing that, but like, yeah, there was that, and then the emotional roller coaster of it all, of just not being yourself, being sick all the time, sick to your stomach all the time. I like the rage was what it was, and like I always give everyone credit, whether it be Colin or because like there was one day where I walked out in the living room, and I had like boxes that I needed to throw away, and Colin was like, "Hey man, so what's the story with these boxes? As in, are you saving them? Do you need me to break them down?" And I was like, "Fuck you!" Blah blah blah. And then I started crying. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. He's like, "Whoa, sorry, dude." You know what I mean? And then like Christina, I was a horrible person too. Like I'm not. That wasn't a. She was my partner then, right? But like I wasn't a good partner to her, obviously.
I think it's understandable. You're going through a crisis.
100%. And she, don't get me wrong. Like we've talked about it, since even breaking up. And she's like, I never blamed you for that. I knew what was happening. You know what I mean? We're there for each other. But then it was like IGN was the same way, where like Casey Lynch was my boss, but he hadn't been my boss that long. And there'd be totally days where he'd walk in and be like, "Hey man," I'd be like. And like he just wouldn't talk. They would all get it, and they would all back off. You know what I mean? I would sit there with my hood up and my headphones on and my sunglasses on because the screen hurt my eyes, and nobody gave me shit for what I was doing. But there was one day I always talk about where I was a horrible day, just bent out of shape, not even like anything. I'm just seething mad the entire day at IGN. I'm like, I just want to go home and get my fucking pajamas on. And so I got on the Muni, which is the San Francisco elevated like bus rail train system. I get on there and I put my hood up. I'm like, don't fucking talk to me. Of course, the Muni breaks down because it's a piece of garbage. I mean, like, and it's just like everything sucks, and I want to murder everyone on this thing. I want to stab everybody. Everything is horrible. And like, I finally get home and I open the front door and I'm like, I'm finally home. I can finally let my guard down. I can finally just be miserable. And I was talking. This is another. I'll never forget it because I forgot it. But I open the door and I look into the kitchen and there's something there. That must have been like, I left this milk out, or the trash is clearly over full. You know what I mean? Nothing bad, but bad enough that it was the straw that breaks my back.
Right.
And I open the door, I see it, and I just yell, "Fuck!" And I slam the door behind me as hard as I can. And as I do it, the deadbolt falls out and slams into the door jamb and bends the wrong way and blows apart the door jamb. And it's just like, I was here, but now I got to deal with that. I go get a hammer, and I'm like hammering it back in. But it was like just such a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you get so low at those points, and then you eventually go on and beat it. It's like going back to what we were saying earlier with, you said this isn't fun anymore, or, you were done, like, writing the story of it. I think it's like a coping mechanism for creative people where they think, like, when they hear, oh, I got a cancer diagnosis, let me write this story in my head of where this is going to go from here. And you have this, it's a way of coping of like trying to get control of a situation.
Yeah.
When this is the kind of thing you have no control over.
Exactly.
I mean, you look at your friend Tim who passed away from cancer. I recently just read a story from a relative of someone who died from cancer, and they were very upset about celebrating people beating cancer because her relative didn't. And it's like, she talked about how like we celebrate people beating cancer, but her takeaway from it was, what about the people who didn't beat cancer? It's not like they didn't fight hard enough. You know what I mean? It's just, it's not that they didn't give it their all. It kind of takes something away from them. And, we live in an era where people very much, they internalize or make everything personal when other people's moments, they're celebrating. And people are like, well, check your privilege, essentially, is what she was saying as a cancer survivor. I thought it was a really interesting perspective, though, that I hadn't read before. Because you really don't have a lot of control over it. You can
100%.
just, you have control over whether you check all the boxes you need to check to get healthy. But there's some people that just don't.
Well, it's always that thing too. You know what I mean? Like, I not that I'm some weirdo or whatever. There's not much for me to be afraid of, right? Mm-hmm. I have this. Even when I'm talking about being at IGN or whatever, and I'm making no money or whatever, I'm still living in San Francisco, living my dream. I'm successful. Everything. This is cool. And I'm also like, that perfect 18 to 35-year-old white male. Everything's pretty good for me, you know what I mean? And like, so when people are like, what's your greatest fear? I was like, I don't know, I don't have one. And now it's cancer, like my cancer coming back, because now knowing what's on the other side of that, right?
Yes.
That's what's terrifying to me.
How often do you think about that?
Not often. Recently, because like I just celebrated the anniversary of announcing it, and then like the next day I was like reaching behind me, and I still feel it right here, like this thing on my back, and it's like, it's not, it probably isn't, it isn't you know what I mean?
You have a normal human body that has bumps sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I'm monitoring the situation, and I will continue to look into it, and I'm going to do a doctor's appointment after this week right now and everything else. But it's like, I'm not going to freak out about it, but it is that thing of like, everything's so great right now. You know what I mean? I have this great girlfriend, I have this great career, we have this great studio, we have this great thing, and like the idea of throwing that all into chaos again, because I'm sick again, and knowing what that would be, and how long will it take, and how long won't it take, and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, And like not only that, like, you know, when we branched out and went on our own, we switched our insurance, and then like there was this huge insurance thing of trying to work with my oncologist, who I only need to see now once every year. I'm pretty sure, I was thinking about that when I rubbed my back. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not solved. I think I'd have to go fight with the insurance company to see him to do that. It's just like, Jesus fucking, you know what I mean? Like, don't let it be that again, because I can't deal with that again.
Do you feel like having a health crisis at a young age, do you think that did you feel like at all like it robbed you of that invincibility feeling that other people get to enjoy?
No, I mean, I think that's the thing right now of like, it's a great gut check moment to me, because I do mean it when I talk about like, oh, my universe got rebooted, right? Like,
right.
I don't think about it. Like, it's always that I'll be in the mirror and I'll look and I'll see my port scar. And it's like, oh, right, that happened. Or, you know, somebody will shoot me from a different angle and I see the white patch in my hair that came back after chemo.
So the white patch, when you say it came back?
When my hair grew in, it grew in with this white spot.
Okay, I was curious about that. You got a little white patch behind your right ear.
Whenever I'm in a video and somebody sees it, some commenter's always like, the guy got cum in his hair? And some other guy's like, he had cancer. And the guy's like, oh my God, I feel so bad. It's pretty great.
It's the ultimate trump card.
And then like that bruise there is still from the bleomycin 4 years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so like there's all these little things about it where it works the different, where I think you don't think about being invincible or whatever, but like having that and then having that fear now of like, what if it all changed, makes me appreciate what I have now so much more. You know what I mean? The fact of like, well, fuck, if that is gonna happen, you have to start. You've been so neglecting how great everything is right now, and acknowledging that and celebrating that and telling people that.
It's something I don't think a lot of people can possibly understand until they've been through it. I'm sure at IGN, and it kind of funny, you're like Rooster Teeth, where you have a lot of kids that come by for Make-A-Wish. And we have that. And I learned something where there was, I was talking with the mother and the father, and something came up in the conversation where real that they weren't together anymore. And I said, well, you guys are divorced? And they said, yeah, we're divorced. They said, but you seem very, very friendly. And they said, oh yeah, we're good. They said, but that's very typical. If a child gets an illness, something like 90% of the parents end up getting divorced.
Sure.
After that crisis is over. Because Make-A-Wish, you don't always see kids who are currently going through something.
Yeah.
A lot of them could have been through treatment, and they're just healthy now and can make the trip.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was fascinating. It's like the impact that has of going through that. You just expend so much energy and so much of your like internal fortitude to get through that you got to leave something for yourself.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
And even like now with you like thinking about going back to it and everything, did that affect? Let's talk about IGN and obviously what is the big story for you guys in the last couple of years, which is breaking away from IGN and starting kind of funny. I mean, that was a huge risk for you to do that, because you had grown to the point, maybe not the point when you were going through your cancer crisis, but you grew to the point where you were the face of IGN.
Right.
Like I consider you and Naomi Kyle. Those are the two faces of IGN.
Sure.
Of an organization that's how many people at the time?
Oh man, 300.
300.
Yeah.
And so like, you go to the YouTube channel, there's Greg, there's Naomi.
Yeah.
And there's literally nobody else that I associate as being the face. I mean, there were some people who had obviously some popular shows.
Yeah.
But you guys were like the spokespeople for the entire network.
Exactly.
And so you're in a situation where then you start working on Kind of Funny.
Yeah.
What was the first glimmers of Kind of Funny?
Oh, I mean, it was like what? It would have been, it was the VidCon when I had the lymph nodes swollen.
Really?
Like that, yeah. Like the story, like for me, it was, the first season of Conversation with Colin goes live like right after I announced that. Or no, right before I got sick. Like it was like we had 2 episodes out.
Yeah.
And it was like then it all changed. And it had been that, so in the scheme, in the timeline of IGN, right? For me, I'd been there. I'd been on the PlayStation team. We had started Podcast Beyond, and then that got a following. It was doing really well with the hardcore fan, the kid who wants to go there and would, when they read an article, would know that Greg Miller wrote it and what that means, and
gotcha.
like they do this. So it's like I was gaining all this.
The kid who yells Beyond at you in the
exactly. I'm gaining popularity with an audience that is the hardcore. Like not everybody who came to IGN knew who I was, right? They did know Naomi. Maybe they knew Damon from news videos or whatever. But I am popular, and like people want me to go to PAX and see all these different things. And so then what happened is that the year before I'm getting sick, the December before I get sick, IGN YouTube decides they want to do long form content and partner with content providers to make long form stuff to take on TV. And this is like the initiative that gives you Geek and Sundry. This is YouTube.
YouTube Originals.
Yeah, what is that? What they call it?
I think they call it YouTube Originals back
right.
then. It was their Originals program.
Right.
You really can't find anything left from this.
Yeah, except Geek and Sundry.
Yeah, Geek and Sundry. Maybe some SourceFed.
Yeah, and so IGN started a channel called Start, and Start was pretty much anchored by Naomi's show, Cheap Cool Crazy, and then my show Up at Noon.
Mm-hmm.
And when Up at Noon started, I didn't know it at the time, but I heard a quote later on, and I think I was fucking up. I think it was Dennis Miller who was talking about how when he got Weekend Update with Dennis Miller, somebody on the SNL staff told him, like, man, everything's gonna change for you from here on out. He's like, well, what do you mean? I've been in sketches before, people, and he's like, no, now they know your name. And it was the same thing here, where it was Up at Noon with Greg Miller, and suddenly I was in the thumbnails, and I was the banner, and I was the ad, and like that was the thing where now if you're just a casual IGN person, you know Greg Miller is associated with the site, and I'm everywhere, and I'm in all these other videos, and you start putting together like, oh, that guy was in this conversation video, and I saw him in this podcast, or I saw him over on the Gauntlet, and all these different things. Mm-hmm. And so that was a YouTube only show Up at Noon for the first year, and so in the first 3 or 4 months of it, they were like, all right, cool, you need to go to VidCon now. I was like, well, what's VidCon? They're like, oh, it's GDC, but for YouTube. You go there and you learn how to be better at YouTube. And I was like, I know how to do YouTube. You kidding me? Like, come on. I
upload.
Yeah, exactly. There's cat videos and you thumbs up. I'm on YouTube all the time with this new show. Like, we'll go there and at least meet YouTube personalities to have on the show. It's like, all right, cool. And so Colin always talks about it that I left the house and I was like, didn't want to go to this. I was like, oh, I'm going to this dumb convention. See you later. And then he always says that I came back into the house, 3 or 4 days later or whatever, and I was talking like an apostle who had the Holy Ghost above his head. I was like, you don't understand, because I had been looking for a creative outlet. Like I had been giving IGN so much at the time. Yeah. For like 5 years, right? And I had loved it, and it was great, and IGN was great to me. But it was that thing you'd come home and work on more IGN stuff, and it was like, well, this kind of sucks. This isn't fulfilling. So I was like looking at writing a comic or a children's book or all this other stuff, and went to that VidCon and discovered that YouTube could be whatever you wanted it to be. And I came back and I was like, I wanted to do a show, still do one day, called Winging It with Greg Miller, where I would, all these places we'd go for, PAXs or whatever, I would sit down and go to the best wings in town and talk to the you know what I mean? Yeah. And the problem was,
your bio was forever, it's like, I love video games.
Oh, still is, yeah.
Wings.
I was born to eat chicken wings and play video games. Yeah. And so I was like, that's great. And it was that I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to use YouTube. I didn't know how to use a camera. And I was like, I need to do other shows to get me there that I can make Wing It with Greg Miller. And so I was like, I'm going to interview Colin in the show Conversation with Colin. And then Nick and Tim, who had been at the VidCon with me, were like, we'll totally help you shoot that and answer questions. And I'll teach you how to, Nick's like, I'll teach you how to do Premiere and all this. I'm like, great.
And you had already done Gauntlet at this point, hadn't you?
Yeah, Gauntlet already happened. Yeah,
Gauntlet season 2.
Oh, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Because I call out for people to subscribe to us, so no, we hadn't done Gauntlet. I guess I did Gauntlet after being sick. That's weird. Time flies, dude.
Time flies. I don't remember what year we did Gauntlet.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. But
I would have been dating Ashley for probably 2 years at that point, so that would have been about 2014 that we did it.
Okay, yeah.
Was it just 2 years ago? Anyway, I don't want to interrupt your story.
No, you're fine. No, that's a really interesting one of like, yeah, dude, because that was a VidCon thing where I was like, you and I had met in passing. But I remember it was you asked me to do Gauntlet at a VidCon.
Yeah, Tim was the guy from your group that I knew the best.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew him the least out of our group.
Is that true?
Yeah. And so that was the thing where I was like, Nick, if Tim hadn't weaseled his way into that VidCon trip, I don't know if Nick would have brought him over to do, because I think I was talking about Sean or whatever, if he would come over and do a Conversation with Colin with us.
Boy, man, it is so funny when you're starting these groups like this. It's like, I think about people I knew at that point in time. Yeah. I was thinking, maybe they should play a part in Red versus Blue. It's like, yeah, but and then that character never came around. Yeah. But I was just thinking, it's like, I wonder how things would be different if we had like a sixth person or a seventh person.
100%, yeah.
And so, or if I didn't offer it to one of those other people.
Of course, yeah, what the trajectory looks like. Because especially when you look at how, like Colin and I talk about all the time, right, of just, holy shit, if we would never have left IGN probably if we had done YouTube on our own, right? Because we wouldn't have known what we're doing. Whereas, like, Nick's the adult and Tim's the strategist and Tim, like, sells stuff for us. And Colin and I would just be sitting there filming each other at the kitchen table, talking about PlayStation.
A lot of chicken wing chefs.
Exactly. And so, yeah, we, started small with Conversation with Colin, then I did the Oreo show, and it was just like, I started getting the feel for that and what this was and how exciting it was and how much fun it was to build something of my own and have it be that there were no gatekeepers, right? Like, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want on this thing except talk about video games because that was the agreement with IGN. And, like, we're just going to go out there and do whatever the hell it is we want to do.
Well, let me ask you about that, the agreement not to do video games. Yeah. Let me play devil's advocate here. Let me play the part of IGN. Sure. So I'm IGN. I'm this massive. I'm the gold standard of games journalism.
Right.
I find this kid Greg Miller, who's writing for the the Columbia Tribune. There's Daily Columbia, the Columbia Daily Tribune.
Yeah, you can just say Columbia Tribune. That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. So I find this guy. He's got a very popular blog.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And I bring him on, and he turns into this huge personality,
right,
where he's the face of our network and everything. So it's like you start doing this thing on your own. That has to cause some tension.
Right. I was lucky enough that Fran Mirabella III is in charge of IGN Video, and he was at that VidCon.
Man has impeccable hair.
Oh my God, the best hair in the world. Good at Destiny too. And so he was at that VidCon, and so like when I'm in the terminal talking about these shows I want to do, I'm talking to him, and I'm talking about starting a YouTube channel. I'm talking about would IGN be okay with that? And it was all from the get-go, super upfront of what I was planning to do, what I wanted to do, how we were going to do it.
Life support at 5%.
Thank you very much. And so what happened is we went and filmed the first season of A Conversation with Colin, and then I brought in rough cuts and had a meeting with Fran and his boss, and then our lawyer, and all these different things. And I kept saying, like, what's the worst that can happen? This is my argument to all of them. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I become the next Felicia Day, and the next Felicia Day works at IGN? And that worked on 99% of everybody, except the lawyer. And he's like, well, no, the worst case scenario is you become Felicia Day and you go work for Machinima. And I'm like, oh, I won't do that. They're like, yeah, well, you don't know that. Well, what? And so, like, it was, we talked it out of what it needed to be, and it was that I wouldn't join an MCN, and they were really worried about Machinima back in the day, because that was when they were going head-to-head.
Yeah, Machinima was, Machinima was a juggernaut at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And then I wouldn't talk about video games, and it was kind of, not fishy, I guess, but it was kind of like this one gray area of I wouldn't cover stuff that IGN would cover. So that was kind of
competitive.
Exactly, but it was kind of weird because IGN covers everything.
True.
So where is that line? And so we were just like we'll use our best judgment, you use your best judgment. Let's talk about it when it gets weird. You know what I mean? If it gets weird and I'm putting up a video you don't like or you think we should have done for IGN, let's talk about it. And so that worked for a long time. But then it was that thing of Nick, Tim, and Colin would come over. Colin and I would do the shows, and we'd have so much fun, and we'd talk about YouTube. And then we were like, well, Nick and Tim started to see how much fun we were having, and that there was actually growth potential here. And they were like, well, what if we do a podcast together? Like, what if we do a podcast called The Game Over Greggy Show, and it's topics, we each bring in a topic, and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do that. It's going to be, a lot different. We're going to have to walk some lines with IGN, da-da-da-da. But we did it, and that was like, when we did that for a year before I think it was like Nick and Tim were like, all right, we're all in on this, and we need to think about what that means. Like, what does that mean for the future? And how, because, it's all good being on the Game Over Greggy show on youtube.com/GameOverGreggy, but there's maybe not as much potential for us, Tim and Nick and Colin, on that. So what do we do? Mm-hmm. And that was when we're like, maybe we rebrand, maybe we do this. And it was, I had been there, I was coming up on 8 years, Nick was coming up on 9 years. It was definitely like, we need to start thinking about what are we really doing here? Is this going to be our future forever? And da-da-da-da. So we're like, okay, cool. We'll worry about it. Was like, how much money does everybody need to leave IGN? Like, to have this be your full-time job? We're having so much fun with it. And we all wrote down our numbers, and it was very clear, like, okay, cool, we're going to work at IGN another 2 years, another 3 years. Like, we're not going to be able to make that much money off of YouTube. That's impossible. And we went to VidCon. And when we were on our way down to VidCon, Tim had leaned over and showed me something on his phone about Patreon. And he's like, have you heard of this? And I'm like, yeah, aren't they crowdfunding or something? He's like, yeah, we should look into it when we get back. I'm like, all right, cool. So we went to VidCon, and we had a panel, and we exited the panel, and these guys were walking by, and we were signing autographs, taking photos. These other guys were walking by, saw us, and ran up to us like, holy shit, you're Greg Miller. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, man, IGN, blah, you're awesome. And I looked down, and they were wearing Patreon shirts. And I was like, oh, man, like, do you guys know the Patreon folks? We were just talking about them. He's like, oh, yeah, we know Patreon. I'm the VP, and this. And I'm like, what, you are? And I was like, you are Patreon, and you knew who we were? And I'm like, yeah, oh, my God. Blah, blah. They had just moved in their San Francisco office, so we were like, let's have a meeting when we get back. Tim and I went and had a meeting, and it was, from the instant clear, like, this is how we do this. This is how, not necessarily leave IGN, but this is how we make this into a real thing. And so that's when we focused on rebranding. We decided on Kind of Funny. We decided we were going to launch the Patreon, and we decided we want to do it with a, quote-unquote viral video.
Can I ask you a question real quickly about using Patreon?
Sure.
Because Patreon didn't exist when we got started. So we have a subscription model, and IGN has a subscription model as well, for their IGN Prime, right?
Yeah.
And those are their users and everything like that. You were working for IGN. That clearly wasn't working for the trajectory in which your career was headed. Do you feel like starting off with Patreon that you're kind of kicking a can down the road a little bit in terms of like, I mean, Patreon's like a partner with you on your subscribers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and at the time though when you're starting, you don't have those resources.
Sure.
Now you guys are you guys the biggest Patreon?
If you added us up, yes, I think we're the biggest public. Patreon has some not behind the scenes like sex video games and
really?
like weird shit like that.
I didn't know about that.
Brings in a lot more money than we do.
Really?
But yeah, like in terms of adding us together, yes, on an individual basis, I think Easy Allies has us beat by like a couple $1,000s or whatever.
Okay.
But we have 2 Patreons, so if you add that up,
you're only number 2
yeah,
on all of Patreon.
yeah. It moves around, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
But no, that was a thing for us for sure, yeah. And so like we started in on that, and that it was like, oh cool, we're gonna do this 100 pence video, we're gonna do it all on one day. And this is August of 2014, and that was when that summer was when we're like, we're gonna have to work at IGN in their 2 years.
Yeah. And let's talk about the skill set that came together here. Like
Sure.
Nick was the producer, produced video, and produced the E3
Live shows and
the shows.
Comic Cons. He was the producer on Up at Noon. Real quick too, if you are watching the gameplay video, I know I could have sold those, but I'm just dicking around here. I need more space to get other stuff, so don't worry about it. All right?
And then Colin was obviously a very popular host.
Yeah.
And
well, he was like a popular writer. Like that was the like Colin was my co-host on a lot of stuff like Podcast Beyond, the #1 PlayStation podcast, the #1 IGN podcast at the time. And
Colin was probably because I'm not a PlayStation person. Colin was the person I was the least familiar with before Kind of Funny.
Yeah, because if it wasn't a video about PlayStation with me, it was that he was writing about PlayStation, or he does these awesome history ofs where he interviews everybody at a studio and talks about how like Naughty Dog came to be a thing.
Yeah, and it's like I'm watching Kind of Funny since you guys established yourself. It's like Colin's one of my favorite personalities.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Especially when you don't know anything about him, right? When you get to go in there and learn and see what a kook he is about everything.
And then Tim had produced some viral videos.
Yeah, he was. So it was that. Yeah, Nick was the behind the camera guy, producer dude. Tim was the one who had done like the really produced IGN thing, the Avengers boy band, the
Resident
game
Evil
shop.
series?
Yeah, Resident Evil stuff. The sponsored content that had super high narrative production value. He was usually spearheading. Then I was the
there wasn't
host.
a lot of it, IGN.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't the focus.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. I mean, Tim and Nick made that happen.
Yeah.
That was like one of their things. You know what I mean? They tried to get like shorts for a long time going, and they had done one, back in the day of like who should direct Star Wars or whatever, and went through and had this really funny thing.
Did you get me an achievement? I love you.
No, there's none. That's just a mission accomplished.
Son of a bitch.
Sorry, we're moving closer. Maybe by the end of this, you'll have it with a bronze. I don't know. You call them on Steam, but the bronze trophy for, walking too far.
Yeah, how dare you bring your Playboy or Playboy?
Don't bring your Playboy trophies into here.
I was gonna say PlayStation fanboyism.
Right. So yeah, we had this crew that was a diverse skill set, but worked really well together. And we've been doing the podcast for a while at this point. We've been doing all the other shows for a while too that we've done, whatever. And then it was that we launched this the first Patreon, and it was that thing where
this is for Kind of Funny videos.
Yeah, this is just kind of funny. Yeah, we couldn't do game stuff obviously at IGN, so it was just Kind of Funny, which is what we were rebranding as. And it was totally a ripoff of. This is of you guys. It's a ripoff of you guys in terms of like we were windowing the content. This was our subscription service.
So flattered.
Because the 4 of us did not have the technical know-how, right, to make a subscription platform and understand how that would go. We started this thing where it was going to get you the shows early or all this different stuff.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I you say like it's a ripoff, but it's like I actually like that because it's a business model.
Oh sure, yeah. No.
I was always unbelievably frustrated with like people who would see us operating and like. It's like these are just, to me, like clearly obvious ideas, like even simple stuff like merch.
Yeah.
And then people wouldn't do it. Even big companies like Machinima, who seemingly were like ripping everything else off that we're doing. And it was one of these things where it was like I feel like we're operating in plain sight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. And that was the thing. I mean, you talk about that, and that was like those were the frustrations with IGN, where I was like, you sent me to VidCon, and I learned all this stuff about how to build it, but we were too big to act on it. You know what I mean? And like. The Podcast Beyond shirts I started and sold on Cafe Press just at cost. Like nobody, you know what I mean? Like it took forever to get an IGN store going because they didn't believe in the brand that way or think of the brand that way.
IGN can certainly source and inventory shirts.
Sure, and now they do. They do pretty well from what I understand. So it's like it was that thing of there was all these little sticking points that when you start giving 4 guys like us who have all these ideas but can't do it in the bigger organization, you give us our own company to do that with, it gets exciting fast. Mm-hmm. And so we launched that first Patreon.
It really is an exciting time.
Yeah.
Starting something like that. Yeah.
We launched the Patreon, right? And in the first 24 hours, we have people giving us $10,000 a month. And that was the moment.
Not individual people, just your total was up to
Our total was up to $10,000 a
Yeah.
month. And that was the moment of
Wow.
like, oh shit. Like if they're going to give us this much money and they know we have great jobs, what happens when we say, you believed in us, we believe in you. Let's do this full time.
And you can talk about video games at that point in time.
Exactly, and so that's what we did, right? We stuck it out. We heated arguments at IGN with some of them about everything we were doing, but they're all our friends, obviously. And in the end, it was like, we gotta go. We gotta go see what this is all about. We can't not miss this opportunity.
Well, it's tough, and I get the perspective of IGN. I can't speak for them, obviously,
sure.
but as somebody who works with talented people, and I meet them when they're trying to get established, and
yeah.
then they come to Rooster Teeth and they get very well established. In a situation where it's clear that someone has a trajectory and they're going in, to the next level, or they're going to do their own thing, which is a normal progression for talent, and we like to look at ourselves as like the SNL model, where there's multiple generations of SNL. So when Will Ferrell goes off and he makes a $100 million movie, that's not bad for SNL. That's great for SNL because people see SNL as a place where they can go and establish a career like that. So like when Meg Turney goes out, and I think last time I checked, she was like $16,000 a month on Patreon. It's like, that's a really cool thing. But it's that interim can be a little tough because everyone needs to be honest with each other. One thing I always want to tell people who work here on a talented basis or creative basis is the only thing I want to be careful of is I don't want your second best ideas.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
I don't want you to come to work every day, think of this really cool thing, and say, oh, I just want to keep that for myself. I don't want, after years of this, I want you to have the respect of just don't give me your second best ideas.
Totally.
And there just comes a point at which you've got to like acknowledge it and say, we're going in different directions and God bless you.
And that was the thing where it's like, we would do stuff off on our own and IGN would be like, well, that could have been a video for us. And I'm like, but you don't want a 35-minute video of us sitting at a table talking. Like, that's not what we understand the IGN product and what our product is, and it's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that would be the back and forth about it. And when we started getting those sticky situations, it was like, we got to go see what this is on our own. So we quit, but we stayed around 3 months to run through the holiday season and kept it mum's the word that we were leaving. We told the staff, but not the public. And so, yeah, January 5th, 2015, that was when we flipped the switch and we're like, we all quit IGN. Here's the second one. We're going to talk about games. We're going to do everything you love from us on this one or this one brand. Kind of fun.
Yeah, and it's like when I tell the story too, I mean, you don't associate like Greg Miller's or like for us it'd be like Meg or Ray and people who went off and did those things and were successful. I would have loved to have had Ray build a streaming, like an entire streaming branch of the company.
Yeah.
We tried to make that happen and it just wasn't where his heart was. But I think of like good examples of like Jeff, when Jeff started Achievement Hunter.
Right.
He was able to start this thing. We had talked about it for years. We wanted to make this group. I was working on Red vs. Blue. He said, I really want to start this thing. He had done 7.5 years on Red vs. Blue. And it was one of those things where, he got started on it. And, I think in that case, like Achievement Hunter was able to grow to the thing it was because of those first like 2 or 3 years when it was just him and Jack. We were able to grow it into something big. And it's like, that's somebody giving their best idea and like leveraging stuff and turning it into something really, really cool.
And that's another, when we talk about who we are, like, we always talk about it that like, Rooster Teeth is, when people ask us where are you in 5 years, I'm like, we're a smaller Rooster Teeth. Like, I see that's how it's going to be, and not in a competitive way. But
I say the same thing about us.
Not in a competitive way, but in a way of like, yeah, I know that Colin won't always want to live in San Francisco and do this. So one day I do hope, yeah, of course. Okay. One day I do hope that he moves to New York and does a show from New York that maybe is just him talking at a camera, or I want to fade into the background one day, not anytime soon, but when I fade into the background and Tim comes up, I want Tim to bring the fresh faces with him and do that, and then maybe I'm living somewhere else, and I'm running my own podcast.
You gotta get somebody better than Kevin.
Oh, God. We gotta do it. You kidding me?
Sorry, Kevin. I hope you didn't listen to the entire video.
Just right there. I can't wait to be mentioned. They're coming up on when they hire me.
So you guys broke away.
Yeah.
You start your Patreon, so it's basically you like quit your job and then pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And you start the second Patreon, which was Kind of Funny Games.
Right.
This is the indication of, hey, we're quitting our jobs. You made that video where it's like we're leaving our jobs.
Yeah, we're taking a chance on you. You guys showed us that you believe in us this much. We want to believe in you just as much.
How long was that a question of, is this going to work or not? Like, what was the time frame?
It's weird. People were asking me when they knew it was coming up that we were leaving, of just like, Are you nervous? Are you nervous? Are you nervous? And I was like, the thing I'm nervous about is that I'm not nervous. I feel like I should. And so it was that thing of like, in December, before we leave and then us in January, we sat down with budgets and Nick was like, all right, so if we're barely making it, this is what we're doing. If we're doing okay, this is what it is. And if it's going great, it's this. Mm-hmm. After the first day of having the second Patreon, we were past the great point. We never looked back, and that was the whole thing of like that. Like when we left, it was you made the joke about Kevin. Like Kevin's our sole employee, and he'd been helping us forever on the shows and teching stuff out, and I think he was already editing at that point. And so when we broke away, he was working at IGN as well. The job Tim got him, and we were like, we don't want to make it weird for you. We're not going to use you. We do hope that we can come back and get you in like 9 months. We got to figure out what it's going to be like out here. We don't know what it's going to be like with that money wise. And literally a half a month in, I looked up from my computer of editing something, and I'm like, we got Kevin. Like, we just got to get Kevin. Like, we can't do this. There's way too much work for 4 of us. And so, like, we went and got Kevin immediately. You know what I mean? And that was because of how well we had done on Patreon that we were able to do that.
Dude, I am so happy with all the years and all the, different departments that we've built out and the things we're capable of pulling off as a company.
Yeah.
But it's really amazing to watch you guys as a group of 5 people, the things that you're able to get done. It's like, and it reminds me so much of when we, the first couple years when we got started. It's just like you're just burning like so many hours working on this thing that you love, and it's like Kind of Funny Live 2 is a great example. It's like that show that you guys put on was just amazing.
Thank you.
That was in May. I was so impressed by that. You had a great host for it too.
Great host. We're trying to get The Rock for next year to one up. Is what we'll see.
Well, we'll see. Don't just tell him you got Vin Diesel up for it, and then he'll do it on a competitive basis.
But no, I mean that's the thing. Like we're right now in particular, right? Like we are. I guess by the time this goes up, probably, right? The studio will be up and running. We'll have our after 2 years of making content out of my spare bedroom, we're actually moving to our own office, our own studio.
So fantastic.
And it's one of those things. These final weeks, like we've been joking and talking, and Kevin's like, I can't wait to get out of this fucking place. I'm like, everybody chill. You're gonna miss this. Like I know we hate this place now. We're so sick of being elbow to elbow. I'm sick of you guys being here when I'm trying to go out to dinner or something. But like, it'll never be like this again. It's only gonna keep getting bigger and cooler and more people and. We're gonna joke and think about. I mean, it was so much easier when there's 4 of us.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's so not easy right now, and we're at each other's throats all the time trying to make this happen. But you're gonna eventually get to that point where I we'll have an office big enough where I don't see Colin all the time, and that's crazy to think about. And I try to have them keep that perspective.
It's like here at No Man's Sky when you like move on from a system, you have the nostalgia for the old starting system.
Those other planets were so much
better. No, it's like that sense of nostalgia. It's important to realize when you're building that, because you don't have any perspective for it when you're going through it. But,
sure.
Those are the good old days.
There's a great Trace Atkins song. You're gonna miss this. There you go. You know it. It's country. You like the country down here in Texas.
I'm in Texas, so clearly that's I love country music so much.
Tim was shaking his head at me. We were out at a barbecue last night, and every country song that came on, I was singing along with. It's like, how do you know every one of these?
Well, it's a tough thing too, because like the audience can react to things that way and say, like those are the good old days.
Oh yeah.
And it's like they miss that, and they talk about like a negative thing. It's like, but these are the good old days for what's coming. 2 years.
And I mean, that's one of the interesting thing with us, like the incremental changes we've made in like like when we did the Let's Play announcement.
If we had control over anything you guys did, I mean, Kevin would be the first.
Of course, get him right out of there.
We're right now we're casting for the new Greg. We've got so many good prospects for that. Yeah, no, it's just like, we've always loved doing stuff where, we got help when we first started. And help's a weird word, but like the guys from Penny Arcade would write about us, and Fark put us on the front page all the time. And those are things that that a lot of people don't remember, but I mean, to this day, it's like that was hugely important to us. And maybe not necessarily from an audience building perspective, but definitely from like that shot in the arm.
Oh yeah.
Of like working on stuff. And so it's like you got to pay some stuff forward. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. And I mean that's you guys have been great about that, and you in particular. Like we all look up to you and what you guys have made here and what you've done. And so like when you say something matters like that, like the thing. When we after we recovered from Kind of Funny Live 2, the first story I told Tim was when I was running back and forth for costume changes or whatever, and I saw you watching from backstage them do their thing with Tone Deaf, where they were in the audience and making everybody jump.
So cool.
And like I was like, Tim, I mean, first off, I was telling Tim like every time I passed Bernie, he would stop me and it would be a bigger compliment on the show, which is how great and amazing this was and how crazy it was.
Great show.
And then it was like when that happened, I saw you mouth agape. Like walk onto stage to watch what was happening because it was so insane.
Yeah, when they were down in the audience and like, that was really fantastic. No, it was great to be part of that, and for like Rooster Teeth, it's like, it is. There's a long period of time where when you're operating, it's you have to do things to stay relevant. You know what I mean? And it's like guys like you and what you guys are doing at Kind of Funny. I mean, you guys are the cool new thing. You know what I mean?
Thank
and so it's really great to be working with you guys.
Yeah, we love it too.
You got to do things to keep yourself young. You know what I'm saying, Greg?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, you never know what's coming down the road. So,
Sounds intimidating when you say it like that.
Well, you know, it's like puts everything in perspective here with like No Man's Sky. There's another system. There's this dude
there's
going
always
off.
something down the road, whether it's those dudes over there chilling out, just AI people that you'll never talk to or touch.
And in context for you, I mean, you talk about where you are now with starting your Patreon, and you know, you started your second Patreon, and it was a big leap, and you had a lot of confidence in it, and you were feeling great about it. And in hindsight, it's easy to say clearly that was the right move to make, but you didn't know that when you made the move. You didn't know that. And there was a point in your life when you're getting on your car and you're walking to your newspaper job and you're like, I'm miserable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I screwed this up. This isn't how this was supposed to go.
Like, there's no guarantees, or something could come along in your life, like a health scare or something like that, or a relationship that you have that doesn't work out. It's like, you can't predict those things, you know what I mean? And so those huge leaps, I have such admiration for people who can make those big leaps, you know, and can just say, look, I'm going to make this thing work. I'm going to give it a shot. I owe it to myself to try to see if this can work.
Yep, exactly.
You know, I totally relate to that, and I totally appreciate you sitting down with us and telling us your story, man.
Thank you, Bernie. It's always a pleasure.
And look, how appropriate, like docking at a space station just as we're finishing
penetrating the space station.
Anything we didn't cover that you want to cover? I like Kevin, by the way.
I know you like Kevin. Everybody likes Kevin.
I think that abuse is part of the
oh no, that's definitely
process.
that's definitely what we do to him every day. We couldn't do Kind of Funny without him, but yeah, we beat the hell out of him.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like we definitely have personalities like that at Rooster Teeth, where it's, you know,
the whipping boy.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like but it makes the audience like him that much more.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm looking at you, John Reisinger.
Cut your hair, hippie.
All right, Greg. Thanks for sitting down with us.
Always a pleasure.
Bye, everybody. Honestly, I've never played this game. Have you played this game without Gavin?
I've played a little bit. Honestly, the most I've played this game without Gavin is when Gavin and I are playing, and we simply have to progress, and we can't. I'll be like, just let me play for 5 minutes, beat this level, and then we come back, and then we film.